I was joined by Rob Chestney, one of the original writers on Star Wars: The Old Republic. Rob really helped shape SWTOR. He wrote a ton of design docs for factions, planets. He wrote the first chapter of the Night Story. He wrote Nostaral's Journal. If you remember those videos with Nostaral talking about the history before the game. He also helped blur with the cutscenes, those cinematics that you remember on YouTube and probably still watch to this day, I would imagine. He also worked with ESO and New World, among other places too that we'll talk about. This is a really good podcast. Rob is a sweetheart. You guys are going to enjoy this episode. They have a lot of Star Wars themed t-shirts though. I don't know if you've noticed that.
At the
Salt Lake.
the Salt Lake?
Yeah, they have all kinds of them. They have the best t-shirts. Like, I like pig butts and I cannot lie, like things like that. You know what I'm saying? So
That's cool. That's funny.
Yeah,
maybe next time I'll check for that. I mean, also Rudy's, like, I have to just say,
Rudy's. Yep.
Coming there when we moved there in 2006 for the BioWare job, and I had 3 kids, and so like Rudy's was a mainstay in our house.
Mm-hmm.
We left.
Yeah, no, I love me some Rudy's, absolutely. So, I think I agree with you. I think probably Terry Black's up there. I don't mind Franklin's, it's good. I love me some Salt Lake because I like the vibe they have at the restaurant, and then also family style. I do notice the same thing as you though. They are at all the airports and everything, so it's quick barbecue, pulled pork sandwich, or whatever you're after. And then Rudy's is good, so you can't go wrong. I will say I'm from Kansas City, so we're barbecue guys ourselves. So not to make this a barbecue podcast all of a sudden, but but we have our spots. But I still tell everyone, it's like, look, a lot of good stuff in Kansas City, but you haven't had brisket from Terry Black's, and you got to go there. And they'll fight me on that, but I'm insistent on it. So
I hear you. And I'm from Georgia, Carolina. So
there you go.
That's my style. The sweet barbecue is what I really vibe with. There's,
Right on. So Carolina, South Carolina?
Oh, yeah. My mom lives in South Carolina now. She lives in Helen Head. And I grew up in Atlanta. So most of the barbecue there is like Carolina style, just the sweet.
Yeah, I've been through Atlanta a few times. It's a big city, man. But in the airport there, everyone goes. I feel like every flight you ever go on, you're connecting in Atlanta. I feel like, so I'm sure you've been there a handful of times. So no, I've been everywhere, man. Like I've seen you've lived all over the place. I've lived in quite a few spots too. So just thought that was interesting. And I also saw. So you started at CNN, man. That's. So you were like, talk to me. So I did listen to a podcast of yours, and it was, I believe, when New World was just set to come out, I want to say, at the time, I want to say. And I remember a little bit of it. But so you were a gamer growing up, then you kind of quit, you kind of didn't game too much, and you got into CNN. Like, walk me through how that happened.
Well, I mean, the truth. Are we live now? No, we're not.
We are. Yeah.
We are. Okay.
We're live. I should have said boom. Wow, I should have did that. Yeah.
That's funny. Okay. Yeah. It's because I was like, how much detail do I actually share?
No, I hear you on that. Yeah, let's.
There's some stories from my teenage years that kind of explain some of this, but essentially, video games was my favorite pastime until I was about 14 or 15, and then I got like, I want. Go out and party. I want to chase girls. I want to do things. I got into all kinds of trouble. And there were still video games, a lot of late night sessions, like on the NES. But I definitely was not as obsessed. I didn't play as many
interests.
RPGs.
Yeah.
It was more like play with friends. Like we played a lot of competitive games. Sorry, I need to silence Slack.
Oh yeah, no worries. I feel you on that. Trust me. It gets going, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I forget every time. It's been a while since I've there we go. And so I spent so those years I kind of got sidetracked. I went to college. I studied at Berkeley. I left for a little while to go to UCLA. I wanted to study screenwriting. And then
smart guy over here, Rob. Smart guy over here. Big brain, smart guy over here. Berkeley.
No, a smart guy would have wanted to be an engineer or Wanting to be a writer is the least advisable, the stupidest thing you could do. You would only do it if you were cursed with that obsession, which is definitely what I am. That's how I so I studied screenwriting. When I moved back to Atlanta, the easiest job I could get was kind of an entry-level job at CNN as a writer, like on a writer track. And so I trained to be a writer there. And I had a lot. I mean, it was a great job, and I had a lot of fun. I worked with Anderson Cooper, I worked with Wolf Blitzer, Christian Amanpour. And in my favorite show, Anderson and I had this show called American Stories, where we collected like the zaniest stories from all over America. And then we even had a segment that was like across the pond. It was like crazy stories from overseas. And it was so fun. And so like that became my sole focus, writing and producing that show. It was a 30-minute show on the weekends. And then the war in Iraq kicked off, and they were like, "We're canceling your show. You're back on war duty." And that was kind of the last nail in the coffin. I mean, also, TV news changed a lot during that time. That's when Fox News first sort of rose up.
Yep.
And I played video games every night after I got off work. Everybody else at CNN went home and watched the news. They watched Peter Jennings. So
this constant news grinder. Oh man, I can only imagine. Yeah.
So I loved it there. I mean, I even remember saying to myself, like, I could stay here like forever. These days that studio is totally closed in Atlanta. But I wanted to get into games. I actually tried. I pitched an idea for a TV show to G4 Television. If you remember them, a 24-hour video game network. And they flew me out to LA, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so cool. I've arrived. And then when they passed over me, I was so disappointed. I was broken. And it was just 6 months later that I decided to like make a module on Neverwinter Nights and send it to BioWare and like see what they thought about it. And that's what led to me getting my real job, which was way better than G4 Television.
Well, first off, that's freaking awesome. I mean, that's cool without a doubt. Working with Anderson Cooper, that's a big time show there that you're working with. So that's freaking cool. And I'm sure that was kind of a difficult decision. Oh no, it absolutely was a difficult decision to do, but I'll tell you, like, for me, it's funny, and let me know what you think about this. And I never want to make these political, so I never do. But I will say this is that like politics I find are naturally interesting to me. Like I can talk politics with anybody, anytime. Now there's a time and place for it. You got to be with the right person. You got to be with someone who can talk about it and not lose their mind, right? Like you have to have the right person to have that discourse with. But I find it to be one of the most interesting conversations that you can have if they're a good conversation. But I also find that there's a fine line between getting into it and then getting too deep into it. And you see it with some people. I felt it, believe me, in my time. I've had to kind of pull myself back and say, hey man, it's not worth getting this worked up over, right? And then also like you can get in arguments with people like your friends and stuff, and that can cause a serious block there. And at the end of the day, it's just politics we have no control over. So, I mean, talk to me. Like, you have that kind of interest, or is it more so just entertainment side of it, or what are your thoughts on that?
Gotcha. I mean, we can talk for the whole hour about that. But I mean, I think ultimately politics is, it is human behavior, right? It's like there's a sort of a sliding scale between talking about just the basic level of human interaction and the way we think and the way we act. And then as you scale up into politics, it's really kind of the same dynamics and structure we're talking about. We're talking about more people and perhaps like more sort of systemic policies and stuff in politics. But it is very related, and I've always found politics fascinating. That was not what my primary interest in CNN was really journalistic. Okay. But in fact, we had a moment where there was a vision for CNN where we were going to be the National Geographic of cable news, and we were going to do only long form, really deep analysis of topics. And I was super excited about that, but that didn't get the ratings. And that's ultimately like, so when people want to criticize CNN and say you're so biased, what I always tell them is, the thing that CNN was biased towards, I can't speak for it today, but was biased towards back then, was ratings. So if people watch, then we keep doing it. People don't watch.
That's how it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And but I can tell you that there were heated political discussions, certainly about the Middle East, about, covering President Bush at the time. It was all the time. And it was really lively environment. And the people there were dedicated to giving you both sides and giving you an honest look at the news. So I'm proud to have been part of it.
100%.
Yeah. But at the end, There was a moment too that, you know, we got asked, like, every show should have at least 30 seconds on your security at risk.
Okay.
And that was really demoralizing. It felt like fear mongering. It felt like, yeah, this is the way to get ratings. Let's try to scare people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, yeah, it was pretty disillusioned. So it actually wasn't a hard decision for me. When the offer came from BioWare, I was gone.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I mean, it's your, like, what you love to do is write, you know, and now you have that opportunity. So I can totally see that. And it's unfortunate too that things have gone that way. You know, then of course we've had podcasts really pick up. You know, people get a lot of their politics news from people who have podcasts now, long form conversations, and in that trust. And I don't just specifically mean with CNN. I mean just news in general has fallen because of chasing those ratings, right? And now it's kind of a shame because, like, if someone were to break a serious news story and a serious news piece that's not meant to be clickbaity, but is in fact quite polarizing and is a big news story, people will automatically assume the worst, even though it's a genuine piece of reporting. So I've always thought that stuff was interesting, Rob. I wanted to touch on that because it's freaking cool in my opinion.
We could talk about it for hours. I agree. I mean, there was a time where, like, conspiracy theories used to be something that interested me. You know, it would be a fun conversation.
Yep.
Then it kind of became this mainstream conversation and this natural reaction to things, and then it became suddenly scary. Like, what are we? We're taking these things like these theories be something that that are way closer to fact than we probably should give them credit for. So
yeah. Well, people like a good theory, don't they? And then the thing is that then once they craft it up, there's you know, self-confirmation, echo chambers, and yeah, I mean, you could absolutely go down that route. I will say, I think that is one of the things that when you examine the pieces of fiction that you're into, you start to see those same patterns, right? So, huge George R.R. Martin fan, Game of Thrones, like, it's just totally A Song of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood. It just taps directly into the politics of an area. The Witcher series, of course, as well, taps directly into it. And Knights of the Old Republic as well. Not as much SWTOR, definitely more into the politics of it as well. But you can clearly see that convergence. It's like, okay, I can escape from the real news. Now all of a sudden I'm involved in, like, fake world global geopolitics in Temeria. You know what I mean?
Sure. But yeah, I mean, it's a great point. In fact, I mean, you maybe, I was even thinking of Game of Thrones as this great example of having been a, you know, fantasy reader, consuming vast amounts of fantasy literature since I was a child. Reading Game of Thrones transformed my relationship with fantasy, as I think I did for a ton of people. Like, it made me see it in a whole different light. And ironically enough, so I had not read it until I went up to interview for the job at BioWare in Edmonton. And they told me there, oh, well, if you do get the job, required reading, you have to read Game of Thrones.
They made you read it?
Yeah. And so
it's a long book.
I was in the hotel room in Edmonton, and that weekend I read the entire first and second books. I did not leave my hotel room. Go to the interview, eat, and to read, and sat there and read. And I was blown away. And then one of our first tasks we had, because you had writer training at BioWare back then. I don't know if they still do it now, but probably about 3 months of training. And one of the first tasks we had was to write essays on the hero's journey, write essays on Game of Thrones, and stuff like that, and have, like, good critical analysis and discussions with the lead writer.
So with that, obviously reading those books there. So growing up, sounds like you've been reading fantasy ever since you were a kid. What were some of the highlight books when you were a child that you were into that kind of fed into it? What games were you into? Was it more tabletop stuff? Give me kind of a rundown of early Rob Chestney, what you were into.
So in
before you discovered girls, yeah,
that changed things quite a bit. In elementary school, I was really into Lloyd Alexander. If you're familiar with that series,
which one?
The Black
Cauldron,
the Castle of Lear, It's all very Welsh inspired. It's actually really great stuff. And certainly as a kid, like Taran is the main character. He starts off as the assistant pig keeper, and the whole fantasy. He's a classic hero's journey story.
Awesome.
But Lloyd Alexander came to speak at my school, and in third grade, I got to introduce him. There's like pictures of me at the school still where like I introduced Lloyd Alexander, and I was such a fan. So that was like an early introduction to it. I think I went on another seminal book for me was The King Must Die by Mary Renault. It's just the story of Theseus. So it's and in fact there's so much today, and this is very personal interest to me, and even related to some of the stuff I'm working on now. There's so much out there today where we try to take a realistic modern look at these old mythological stories, and that's what Mary Renault does with Theseus' life and The King Must Die, and then the sequel, which is Bull from the Sea. Those were huge books for me, those two. And then
that's awesome.
Dragonlance, Thieves World. Thieves World was also a favorite of mine. It was
so you're always a heavy reader then, as a young kid then.
Oh, for sure. I mean, obviously the Lord of the Rings was, I think I started trying to write the sequel to the Lord of the Rings on my own about Legolas and Gimli's children when I was.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah. No, that so. Did you like Odyssey? Did you see Odyssey yet?
Oh yeah, I saw it on opening night. And,
I'm sure, because if you like King Must Die, then you're probably into that era, right? The Bronze Age.
100%. It's very important for me to see it right now. So,
what did you think about it?
I loved it. I mean, we could talk about that for a long time too. But it's interesting because I definitely thought it would be a little more fantastical. And that was one of the things that I was kind of glad to see, because I love the realism angle. I love the fact that you can take everything, that even Athena's presence, to be something that Odysseus imagined, his conscience, and that was cool. Obviously, Polyphemus, the scene with him, like that's fantastical. The scene with Circe. So I've been talking about this a lot with a lot of people, and this concept of mythic realism is something that is at the heart of what I'm working on now. And so it's like a really very cool. It's just something that's really cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is something that, if you ever listen to Brandon Sanderson's series, he has his lecture series, at Mistborn. Those are incredible books. Wheel of Time I never actually read, which is crazy. And I didn't realize that I think there's a TV show of it too, but I have to check that out.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard that. So I need to do both of those things. But he talks about this as well. George R. R. Martin talks about this. Like, basically, how magical do you want to make your story? Do you want to make like super high fantasy where magic is in there? Okay, then what are the rules? Are there rules? What's the hard magic, soft magic? But I think that I prefer a less magical world where the magical that is there you can't explain. And I think that's what George R. R. Martin does so well compared to some of the other works of fiction out there. Heck, even Star Wars with the Force. I kind of prefer that. It's like you can't really quite explain what happened. Okay, is it the old gods, the new gods, the first men, the others, like what are all these factions? Where did they come from? Where did they start? But the world itself feels lived in. The people live normal lives, right? You still have to have the farmers bringing the crops in. You still have to have the lords overseeing everything, with city watching over everyone. And like, I kind of do prefer that than say like a more high fantasy where you have floating things around the city overwatching everybody, and you know what I'm saying. That's, I kind of do vibe with that.
Absolutely. So it's hard not to jump in there, but I totally. That's what Game of Thrones was. It was also a huge sort of step forward for me in terms of seeing this more low magic approach to fantasy, and the way that he treated mystery. I think it's critical. It's also mirrors our human experience of it, right? Like, it does, I choose to believe in a world where there's some kind of magic going on. Like, everything is just completely mundane. I just choose otherwise. I think it's a better story, more or less, to say there's some magic in the world, but it's mysterious. And if you could understand that, it wouldn't be magic anymore, it'd be science. But I do think, and one of my big pushes, I guess, in a lot of projects I've worked on, is to say, well, if we are going to have fantasy, let's not go quite to the level of like Dungeons and Dragons. That came up a lot when I was working at EverQuest, where okay, people like there's just stuff floating because things float, and people can just pull a fireball into their hands because that's what you do.
Right.
But rather, let's always have an explanation. Like there's some kind of, even if it's supernatural, and even even some of the TV shows more recently, like Arcane. I was watching Arcane, the Riot show, and those
awesome show, by the way.
Magic there's a very grounded magic, even though it has huge and explosive and crazy and existentially dangerous. It's still got this sort of feeling that there's a science to it. There's a way that people could have understanding it. So I really like that because it feels more relatable as a person.
Yep. Arcane was awesome. I thought that was great. I did not think I would like it based on like the artwork on it and everything, but actually I came to love it. I came to love everything about it. The characters, the voice acting, the artwork. I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't really like a lot of animated shows. I guess the other one that I really loved was Castlevania. I thought that was just like, I mean, are you kidding me? You know what I'm saying? That was just fantastic. I guess there's a few that I like. I shouldn't say that. So I do like them more than I give credit. But yeah, no, that was great. But I hear you on that. Like a hard magic system is kind of what you're after. I think my preference is a bit more soft, where it's more mystical, where it's like, Lord of the Rings, where it's like, okay, Gandalf isn't going to, call a big lightning blast and smite all of, the Balrog. He's gonna, but he will, light the way, or he will, call the Eagles, or he will, like, I think that there is like I like the kind of the mystical whimsicalness of it, but it's not a ex machina, which of course everyone says at the end of Return of the King. Why couldn't they have just flown all the way there? That's the one thing, right? But there's people have tried to explain that.
It's definitely high fantasy, and I was working on a Lord of the Rings project recently, so it was definitely something that we talked about a lot. Was the flavor of fantasy, and I mean, one of the things is that magic and Lord of the Rings is a religion, right? It's spiritual. Like everything comes from the source, like comes from the gods and from the song. Right. And so whatever, Gandalf himself is an angel essentially. So it really is a very different approach to magic. But so it's kind of like on the edge. It's kind of in between.
It is in between, isn't it? Yeah.
Really cool. Like that's why one of the reasons why it's so special. I love Lord of the Rings. So
it's cool. I always enjoy it. And then of course you have, speaking of Mistborn, I don't know if you've ever read the Mistborn books. But how they have it with like the metal and like everything is very scientific. Even then, that's pretty cool too. So there's ways of doing it for sure. At the end of the day, I don't care what way you do it, as long as the story's good. You know what I'm saying? As long as you're not like, well, that's stupid. Why didn't he just do that then? I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and to me, it's how the characters are interacting. So if you create this paradigm or these laws of nature in this world, and you make it work a certain way, how do the characters interact with that? And do they act in ways that I can understand and relate with? And does that, and as they interact with it, does that evolve? Does it become an interesting story in and of itself? It doesn't have to. Like magic can just be kind of on the side. I mean, even you could certainly say in Game of Thrones, and maybe the relationship between the Targaryens and the dragons is sort of an exception because it's very central. But the stuff with the flame, I can't remember his name, the name right now, what they call the god of flame that she worships. But
Lord of Light,
the Lord of Light, something like that. That's very, it's on the side of things. It's not like dominating the scene all the time. And I think that's a way that it doesn't have to be something that every character needs to worry about, which is great.
Is that awesome in there? How there's almost like different magical systems powered by different gods, if you will, and it's almost like a struggle between all these older gods and the people who pray to these gods or worship these gods or study this magic. There's almost like something kind of immoral to using it, which is really cool. But B, it's almost deeper than surface level, which I love about it. You know, it's almost like, okay, Melisandre, you know, killing Renly Baratheon with this demon baby, like that is so brutal, right? But it is at the same time like it's really cool, but it seems to be immoral to use it. But also she's bringing people back to life as well, which also feels very, you know, immoral or unnatural, I guess is the better word for it too.
Yeah, it's certainly portrayed as being unnatural. And it's interesting in that because a lot of times you have the older religion being the thing that's depicted as the darker, you know, the dark human sacrifice related stuff. And then we have newer religions. And certainly that's maybe probably that's the way our modern world is. So it makes sense to us. But in there, they really took it that like, oh no, this magic is like, it's a much darker indulgence than
what does it want, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it almost cool. It has a personality to it in Game of Thrones, which is fantastic.
Even Alice Rivers and I don't know if you're watching House of the Dragon, but even she, like the way she's talking about, you know, Harrenhal and the weirwood trees, like, you know, I'm hungry, or I'm not satisfied by these diamonds. The way she's talking is almost like she's part of this ancient magic on Harrenhal, built on these weirwood trees. They won't this diamonds you're offering won't satisfy my hunger. It's like, it's just very, I don't know, it's very cool, but not to dive all the way into that. I know we could talk about that forever, but
listen, is that the new season? Is that the newest season that's just?
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I'm up to the last season. I haven't. I'm still catching up on a couple different shows.
Yeah. No, fair
enough. Wait to get to it.
You probably got to be ear to the ground on all this stuff just to see what's out there, what people are doing. Then, right?
It definitely is like it flows naturally throughout my life, right? My personal life, my hobbies, my interests, and my professional life all bleed together in that space, which is, you know, why I wanted to do this, because it's what I like to think about. Storytelling worlds, you know, fantasy. That's everything to me. So
I think that's incredible. And we didn't even talk about Elder Scrolls yet. So there's a whole other magic system and stuff in there too. So so Star Wars, like, what the heck? Like, were you a Star Wars fan growing up? Were you so? Did you only have to learn it because you had to learn it? Like, talk to me about your Star Wars experience. Well, that's what Chris Avallone said. He's like, the only reason we got the Star Wars job is like, I guess I have to know Star Wars now. You know, that kind of thing.
That's so funny. That it certainly wasn't my the case with me, but some of those great writers, you know, that's exactly was their experience with it. It's kind of like that, you know, the old story from KOTOR about Dave Gator. You know, HK-47 was not a character. He really didn't love that character, but it ended up being the most popular companion character in KOTOR. And I think, you know, I don't know where Dave stood on liking Star Wars at a younger age, but I certainly did. I mean, you know, Empire Strikes Back. Like I think I came of it. You know, I became old enough to go see a movie like that when Empire came out. And I don't remember whether I saw, you know, I don't think I had seen Star Wars. I think I saw Empire first. It's kind of a bummer. Do you think what an opportunity to have missed, you know, the build up to it? But Empire's such an amazing piece of, you know, it's such an amazing work. Like I still refer to it and look at it all the time for examples of character conflict and introducing new elements to an IP. Like I think it's just really rife with a lot of good lessons for people like me and people, you know, like us who work in this space. But so I love Star Wars, and I was thrilled to have the opportunity. When I started at BioWare, we were actually, so Dragon Age Origins was in development. There was
what a great game.
Are we going to make a Dragon Age MMO? And we actually had a few months there where we were looking at both and talking about both, which was really cool. So we got excited enough, a few of us who were, you know, new to BioWare, because those of us, except for the senior leadership of the team, came from Edmonton. A lot of us were new hires brought into Austin for Star Wars: The Old Republic. And as we got to learn more about Dragon Age, we were super excited to work on Dragon Age Online. And so there's a little bit of a, you know, even though I wouldn't have guessed it coming in the door, but like when we chose to go to Star Wars, like, oh, wow, okay, like that's cool. But same time, we didn't work more on Dragon Age. But Star Wars was thrilling, and I was a huge fan. And certainly at that time, the only thing is the prequels had come out recently. So that was our most recent material to work with.
Right. Yeah, well, I can only imagine. The Empire Strikes Back's my favorite by far. I grew up with the prequels, right? I was born in 96, so like my first 7-8 years of life were those movies, and I loved them, but it never got better than Bespin Cloud City to me. It was just incredible. Hey guys, just started Pembridge Plus over on Patreon. I do a weekly show with my good buddy Adrian. We talk about video game news, TV shows, all kinds of different stuff over there, to be honest. And you get a little bit of a behind the scenes on the podcast, the guests I bring in, and some other cool goodies too. So if you want to support the channel, that's a great place to do so. And actually, while we're real quick before we move on from that, Odyssey. I don't remember the name of the Greek general with the armor. What was his name? I don't.
Agamemnon.
Okay, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but he gave me like Vader vibes, especially when they opened the gates of Troy and all the soldiers are running past. It reminded me of A New Hope, the first Star Wars, when Vader's walking out and the stormtroopers are running by him.
Yeah, I mean, he was very much cast, and like for sure. I mean, we never even got to see his face except for like that one little glimpse in one scene. I think his death scene. But yeah, it was a really interesting take on Agamemnon, and then making Menelaus, a more sympathetic character, which is I think true to the story, true to the mythology. I mean, Agamemnon is not cast necessarily as that extremely dark, and certainly I think the armor itself has almost anachronistic feel, but I think Nolan did that on purpose because he wanted to modernize that and kind of tap into our cultural memory that says like, oh, the guy in black, like this is a dark guy.
Yeah, exactly.
It has but I thought it was really cool. And Agamemnon was, the way that was treated in there was one of the best parts of the story, I think, for sure.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to bring that because when I watched the movie, I'm like, oh, this gives me complete Darth Vader vibes. So no, awesome movie. But okay, so so I love Dragon Age Origins. I actually just put a video out earlier. I'm like, I think that Dragon Age Origins, and did you play that game at all?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
oh man,
the whole thing before it ever came out. So yeah.
Oh man,
enough.
I mean, that game with the lore that it had established for it moving forward, it was a dark medieval fantasy game, The Blight. I don't remember it completely, but I just remember that it was one of the most in-depth RPGs ever made, and even to this day, I think it really is. It really laid the foundation for Mass Effect at BioWare going forward, I think, in a lot of ways. And you can see Dragon Age Inquisition heavily it brought a lot of Mass Effect stuff into it and made it so great, I thought, especially with the creating the factions. So you all wanted Dragon Age Online? I think I remember reading about that somewhere.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't what we wanted, but it was in the studio. It was, hey, there's a chance we're going to end up, if the deal with Lucas doesn't come through, we might work on
yeah, you would have been happy either way, more or less.
Yes,
like, you guys, exactly. Okay, I hear you.
So I mean, the opportunity to make the successor to KOTOR and KOTOR 2 was, I mean, once in a lifetime. So it wasn't like that was any less exciting. It just was. We had gotten excited about the Dragon Age IP, having learned all about it during those months.
Well, I will say this, for me and a lot of folks like me, Knights of the Old Republic 1, as a kid, it really changed my life in gaming forever, because like now I'm actually in Star Wars, in the universe, creating my story, and I'm Revan, and then the second one, like Kreia is one of the best written characters ever made, and Avalon's deconstruction of the Force itself. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But those two games, like, I couldn't have been more happy, and to this day I play the heck out of them. And when they announced Star Wars The Old Republic, I lost my mind as a little kid. I must have been, 12? I was like, I mean, I could not believe it. In fact, I was so excited that my dad, who I mentioned lived in Austin, he drove me by your guys' office. Yeah, because he worked in the same roughly, because he was the database administrator for the state of Texas there. So he would basically look over basically the entire welfare state. He would keep the structure on that.
Okay.
But he worked like right next to you guys.
Okay.
So he drove me by and he's like, that's where they're making SWTOR right there. And I was like, no way, that's what they're doing it. Like, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So, but I had an account like today you could create one. Like I created an account. I was watching all the news stuff and, all your updates on this bad boy right here. All the stuff on, man, I'm telling you, it was a great day for little Carter and so many other people like us. So when you had that, what was they break it down, they say, hey guys, okay, here's a decision, we're going this route. What was that initial news like, hey, this is what we're working on, this is what your first steps are to begin working on this? What did that look like?
I mean, it was super cool. There were, when I started at Austin, I was like the 13th employee of the studio. But I think by the time we made that call, there were probably like 25 of us all together, and including like writers were very front loaded on that. And Daniel Erickson, the lead writer, and James Olin, the lead designer, creative director, legend from KOTOR. And, the two of them had been working on this for months, and they had so many great ideas, and they had already kind of prepped us all, but only a couple of us were actually done with our writer training, I think, at the point where we actually made the decision. That's why I got the unique opportunity to write some of those early design documents for the world. But it was, it was super exciting. It was cool. It was like, now let's just rattle off all these lists of planets and kind of what we want to do with them. And each one was like a theme park. We were all playing World of Warcraft, of course. So that was thinking of the world of Star Wars, the universe of Star Wars like that was a very interesting and fun thing to do. And Daniel had come in with the idea of the boss mystics and like these different, expressions of force that I thought were revolutionary. And I still
doesn't get enough love. Doesn't get enough love. The boss mystics don't, for what they've. I mean, there's a lot of lore there that you guys created in Star Wars that I hope doesn't get lost one day, because there's some great stuff in there. So basically, so they brought you in, they laid out kind of the skeleton, if you will, and then you guys kind of filled in. Or is that more or less?
We didn't actually even know at that point. The decision was not firm at the beginning that we were going to do class stories, which became essentially the spine of the narrative experience in SWTOR. But it was early on. It was definitely on the table from the beginning. It was something that Daniel was really strong on, and really because we wanted to make you feel, we wanted to deliver on the fantasy of that role that you chose. And whereas in KOTOR, which is again one of the best games ever made in history, you had to kind of play Revan, whether you want to play like a more smuggler gun guy or not. But hey, love, what if we actually delivered you the fantasy of being Han Solo? What if we delivered you the fantasy of being Boba Fett? And that became really our rallying cry. And even as we started to the world, we got to build in a little bit more independently. Like as we came up with the stories for Voss, we came up with the stories for Alderaan, Coruscant. Each one of those had, we actually made up the stories of like, hey, here's what's going on in the world. And then these 8 different characters are going to step into those with their own personal stories. And that's the framework that came together in those first several months. And we were pitching ideas for each of the planets. We were pitching ideas for each.
That's awesome.
And then the companions kind of came along, as the second part of the class stories. But obviously, we were all excited to get to that, especially when we're told like, oh no, each class is going to get its own cast of companions. That was just like the best news I'd ever heard.
The fact that you guys were able to do that with fully voiced characters and companions fully voiced, every single quest you picked up fully voiced, and it wasn't just like cheap fully voiced, like just reading a couple of lines. No, like full in-depth conversations for every single quest, side quest, planetary quest. I can't believe you're able to do that.
Every one of those was handled by a cinematic designer. And you can see it when you look at the conversations. I've worked on a lot of games since that have cinematic dialogue, but often we're using, canned shots and stuff like that. Whereas each one of those got touched by a bona fide cinematic designer who was trained and really really focused on that. And the partnership with LucasArts was a huge benefit for the VO. I think an unprecedented cost for the VO in Star Wars at that time. But Lucas was instrumental in that, and we had a very close relationship with them going back and forth because all the VO was recorded through them. Of course, we were directing it because we were writing it, but it was a really great. That was an example of a great part of the partnership. I mean, in fact, I would say overall the partnership between LucasArts and BioWare for me is an inspiration for the way I think studios should work together at every level. And I had a great experience with LucasArts. Not everybody will say that, but I think I think
it's funny you say that. Well, it's funny you say that because I've heard mixed bag, and I think that's because they were putting a massive amount of faith into what SWTOR was going to become. They probably were very much incentivized to work with you guys because I talked to a few people, obviously Chris, and he was kind of under a crunch, and there was some pretty rough negotiations there. Michael Gummelt, who
KOTOR 2.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that he was able to do what he did with what he had is awesome. But then also, Michael Gummelt was talking about Jedi Outcast, Jedi Academy, and how the Academy they weren't super happy with the sales numbers, which makes sense. They have to make money and do their thing. But also, when you look back at it, there was a lot of canceled games in that time. Like there's Star Wars Battlefront 3 that got canceled. There was Star Wars 1313 that got canceled. KOTOR 3 got canceled. I think they were going to do it because
a little bit later, yeah.
So I think, and you tell me what your thought is on this. I think they were basically saying, okay, we're going to just go in on this project for the time being. Is that fair?
I definitely SWTOR was the biggest Star Wars video game project at that time, for sure. Like no doubt about it. It was the LucasArts resources that were dedicated to it were huge, and it was it was a huge because people, and one of the sad things about that whole period is everybody was looking at World of Warcraft and being like, we're going to do that. We're going to be the next WoW. We're going to be the WoW killer. We're going to make the same game, and so many that led to so many bad decisions. Not all bad. To say and I think SWTOR is awesome. But some of the worst decisions we made were in the effort to, either compete with World of Warcraft or to supplant World of Warcraft or to be the same. Like our combat system, a lot of people have criticized it for being too much like World of Warcraft, which I think was a conversation from early on. But I think that the dollar signs were in everybody's eyes, and that's what's pulled. That was. Honestly, I think it was a huge factor in EA's decision to purchase BioWare a few years later. Which became another huge shift in the way the development changed over that time period.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff in there. So that's the big thing, and I will tell you, I never played WoW until the classic came out in 2019. I want to say it came out.
Wow.
And then I played through, and I'm like, "This is incredible!" Good thing I didn't find out about this when I was a kid, or I never would have done anything ever in my life. but I love SWTOR, and it was my first introduction to that, so I didn't have that same. That was my introduction to that type of gameplay. So it was great to me. It was perfect for me. But I can see where you're coming from on that totally, right? And that's what a lot of places have issues with these days. Is they want, and you would know this better than most, they want you to be the next whatever that success is.
Yeah. There's a whole nother conversation there about the problem with the game industry these days. But now, of course, there's so many changes in the last 2 years that even what we might have said about game development then is you have to now take in so many other factors into account. We can't take the lessons we learned just from that. But I will say, the seeds of AAA's destruction, if you will, were sown way back then. And that's, I think, what's been so frustrating the last several years. As much as I love being in the game industry. I've loved every gig, I've loved almost everybody I've worked with. But when you work for a big corporation and what's driving decisions is actually the stock price, it's not some nefarious villain who's making the bad decisions that are ruining everything. It's actually market forces and numbers. So it's a demon you can't even fight. Is really controlling things that are going on. But I think that's I think sadly too, there became this notion that these big, huge storytelling games have to be astronomical astronomically expensive. Like we have to spend, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on VO. We have to, do all this, and it's impossible to make a game like this without investing that much money. And I think that's not true. Like it's not fair.
Yeah, there's a lot of great examples recently of games that were not astronomically expensive that really were amazing. Expedition 33 was just mind blowing.
Perfect.
Fall of Avalon Tainted Grail was really good as well. Like there's a lot of great smaller games, and I wouldn't really necessarily call them indie. They're a bit bigger than indie, but I guess today it just seems like like I guess like if it's not Call of Duty, then people call it, I don't know, that's just
something else thing. But I mean, I think all those names are probably destined to fall away in the next several years, because the landscape is evolving so rapidly. But there's going to be a lot more. We're still going to have the heavy hitters, but there's going to be a lot more independently made games, whether it's using AI or not, whether it's using Unreal's latest tools, which are mind blowing to someone who's been constrained by different engines. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing what we can do, and it really changes, I think, the dynamics of the industry.
I hope it's not AI. I really do, because I really do, because I don't know. I think I don't want to. My take is not different than anyone else's take about generative AI. But it affects you more than it affects me. I don't want our great writers to fall away because you have this thing mimicking great writers of the past, not making any, I don't know. It's something very immoral. We talk about Game of Thrones magic. This is man-made magic, This is the other. This is some Melisandre stuff, I don't know. What's your? Is it? That's
another subject, and it's such a popular topic, and so hotly debated that it's like it's hard to even discuss it in rational terms. But I'll say this: I do not have a religious opposition to AI. I'm not like diametrically opposed to it. I've never felt threatened as a writer by AI, because I just feel like there's so much writing that can be done, so much storytelling, and like, if it can compete with me, then let it compete, and we'll see what happens. Like, I'm confident that I can tell stories that people are going to love, and that there's enough, audience out there to enjoy these stories. And whether we eventually see themes, and like there's a whole tier of AI storytelling and a tier of human-made storytelling that are that become different platforms and different audiences, so be it. I'm less focused on actually the writing part of it. Like the art part of it is, I think, the bigger existential question, because it has such an impact. Like writing is words, I mean, it still goes into the fundamental.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But like having AI create art is a whole nother thing. And, frankly, like it's there where I see it more. So I've seen some well-written AI short stories that I was like, okay, gosh, I got to give some credit there. Like that was interesting to read. I have not seen art that showed up that had the soul. Like I can see the difference. I can't always, I may look at something and mistakenly say it's AI, or mistakenly say it's not AI, but on the whole, there is something that's missing from AI art for me. Certainly in the stuff that I've seen experimented with in the studios I've worked in, and the project that I'm working on now, like it just doesn't match what we can do and what we want to do, and so it's not going to be used. So that's it. But the big thing, I mean, the awesome thing about AI is like helping us with tools, like, and with code. And so I mean, every engineer I know is embraced it utterly. They're like, I'm not going to write code like that anymore. I'm going to be using AI. And when I use Unreal, which I've got pretty good expertise in, but man, it saves me the trouble of having to track down the answers to some of these harder questions as I'm adjusting things in Unreal. And that to me is the biggest advantage ever. And I'm like, to me, that makes AI very valuable. But as you said, generative AI is where it's just a different question, and I don't think we're going to get.
Yeah,
I don't think that people are going to fall for it, honestly.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that it's a problem using it as a tool. I use it as a tool. I think it only makes sense to use it as a tool. I don't think that people should be upset about. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some serious consequences about, the use of water resources. Those are all very much conversations that should be had. That being said, I do use them in these ways, but I do think that there's also a moral question of, should you consume whole products made by artificial intelligence? I think that there is a moral question there. Is it the end of the world? No, but I think to me, it absolutely, if I were to listen to an AI song, there's almost some kind of innate weirdness to it. That maybe it's just because it's the newest thing out here, and I'm not. Maybe in 100 years, people are like, what? It's just AI music. That's the best AI music maker ever. You know, they won't care. But to me, innately, it's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually a great example. Like, I don't deal much with AI music right now in anything I'm working on, but as an audience member, as a listener, my wife showed me this sort of like, he didn't tell me it was an AI musician, but it was like some soul music. It was good. Like, I heard
it was good. Yeah.
And then I liked it, and then we listened to the rest of the album, and it was exactly the same. Like, every song was just like another version of the same thing.
Of that.
And I'm not sure that's probably not true with every AI artist and so on and so forth. But what I will say is, like, 3 days later, I couldn't have told you anything about that song. I don't think I would have recognized that song. So right. I think there's something that's in the unconscious where a connection is not being made. And I think, because I mean, it's true. Like, I think entertainment itself, like a lot of what's happening with entertainment is subconscious, right? Like, there's a lot of things that we are aware of and we can sit and talk about, but then there's things that are happening and we can still talk about them often, but they're happening at a subconscious level. And I think that's the level where AI, in terms of, again, art and music, is not gonna compete, and probably in writing too. Like, I haven't given it a chance. I think all I've read is a couple of short stories that were like in the New York Times where they said, "Hey, can you tell the difference?" And I was like, "Well, it's a pretty good short story. Could I tell you what it was about at this point? No."
Yeah.
So that may be the thing. It's just not memorable. It doesn't stick with you in the same way as something written by a person else.
Yeah. No. Fair enough. And it's a question that we'll see answered in time, I'm sure. Everyone's concerned, and I think we should be, especially when you look at some of the people who are behind some of these companies. But that's another question in conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, though, that I wish that it didn't feel like a political correctness conversation, because I feel like that's been problematic. And so, like, right, that's pushed some people, like political correctness and wokeness or what have you, has pushed a lot of people to think and feel and believe a certain way because they're reacting to that. And I see the same thing with AI, where it's like this sort of religious reaction to it. And I'm like, well, let's just be cool. Like, fine, put it out there. Let's see what happens. I'm not opposed. I'm not going to stone to death any game developer who uses AI. I'm not going to judge them at all, but let's just put it to the test and see what's better.
Fair enough.
And I firmly believe, like, there's a place for us. That it's not going to replace us.
Yeah, fair enough. It could just become ultimately a tool that we use that ultimately makes our lives much better and easier and simpler and streamlined. And only, like, I hope that's where everything goes. I think that's the vision.
Yeah, that would be a really good result.
Yeah, that would be a very good result. Yeah. We've all seen Skynet. We know what we don't want it to go that way. You don't want John Connor to have to lead us all into a war. But okay, so you're at BioWare. They're breaking it down to you. Do you remember what your first couple of projects that you worked on SWTOR was?
The first things that I wrote were the planet documents. So, like, they were sort of 2-pagers on each of the planets, and Daniel and Eric, and I think Daniel, in fact, I mean, he came with a lot of these ideas and kind of like, pitched them on me, and then I wrote them up, and we went back and forth. Some of them I feel like I contributed a lot to. But it was really just the two of us working on several of those. Actually, before that, the faction documents. We wrote a faction document for the Republic, one for the Jedi, one for the Sith, one for the Empire, one for the Hutts, one, so on and so forth.
How cool
and those,
is that?
These are still the practices that I use today when I'm world building. Is I use these, like, hey, we need to write these things, and a lot of it is just on us to figure these things out as we're writing them. They become references for the whole team as development goes forward. But in a way, the most important thing they do is let us think through things at a level where we're actually writing them out, rather than just putting them as a bullet point on a PowerPoint. That's another huge discussion about game design by PowerPoint versus design documentation. But yeah, so that was the first stuff that I worked on was were these sort of fundamental narrative design documents, the details. And we would go through for Alderaan, we write up about the economy, we write up about what's the cultural conflict there, who are some of the major players in the conflict that's going on in Alderaan. And that was super fun, really cool. And then those just became like the very foundation of when we went to write stories there later. A lot of that lived on, though. It surprised me a lot 5 years later to look back and be like, wow, these characters that were mentioned in those documents written way back then are still in the game. Including
to see some of the stuff happening. Yeah. That's very cool.
Honestly. So yeah, that was the first stuff. I wrote it. Then I started working on the Jedi Knight storyline. And about the same time, we did a multiplayer dialogue test in the Neverwinter Nights, the Aurora engine toolset. And that was the first of its kind that we had seen or played or worked on. And so it was like actually a test, and it worked pretty cool. We were impressed enough with it to move forward, which I'm pretty proud of having been part of that, even though it was more technical than, story driven.
The fact that I could play with my buddy and go through that game and not miss a beat is phenomenal and amazing. That game was so revolutionary for its time. I still can't believe what you guys are able to do, especially when you consider like where game development was in 2011 versus where it is now. And you apply that equal time for between 2011 to what would it be, 15 years? So what, 1996? Like it's like the jump in technology, like that game still holds up technologically today. Yeah. And it's still like way better than how a lot of MMOs out there that exist today operate. Now, granted, a lot of the MMOs that exist today are from those time areas or before, right? WoW is still a freaking machine. Incredibly enough, but still awesome technologically.
Yeah, I would put a lot of credit on the strength of the BioWare culture and our dedication to the mission. The mission statement. I like to tell this story because it was a huge emotional moment for me. But the mission statement at BioWare was to create the best story-driven games in the world in the context of humility and integrity. And that sticks with me today because it hit me right there. I remember being in orientation with the doctors who founded BioWare, Ray and Greg, and Ray was talking to us about the importance of humility in game development, and I started crying. Like I was so proud to be working as part of this organization on something that was so important to me personally. And yeah, I think the world of those guys. I think the world of like the original, creative vision of BioWare. And what we were at that time. And even though things got worse at EA, you can't blame it all on EA. There were a lot of factors, but that I think was why you see that game. We were really focused on creating something that you hadn't seen before, a story-driven MMO. And while the Final Fantasy and some other games since then have delivered a much higher caliber story in the MMO space, that was epic and still stands for sure.
I don't know. I don't know if Final Fantasy obviously known for its story, and it's very similar to SWTOR in the sense that it's a story game first, MMO second, and I would classify that SWTOR today I would classify as story first, MMO second, because they've completely stripped away tons of the MMO aspect of the MMO, which I really didn't like some of the streamlining they did to SWTOR, but I get it. They're trying to appeal to the casual guy. It's more about cosmetics, bringing in money, and they have to keep the game alive. That's how they're doing it. So I understand the why. I just wish that they would give us like a classic version of SWTOR, absolutely, to experience that day one with the story, with the MMO aspects of crafting, gearing up, making sure your companion's geared. I loved the game so much in its vanilla state. Yeah, so that BioWare team, you were there when all those, that was like the dream team. If you look at that team,
not compared to the team up in Edmonton that was working on Dragon Age with Dave Gator, and there's although eventually Drew came down, so Drew wasn't there at the beginning. He came down later and became
Drew.
Then we became a little bit more of a dream team.
Drew Karpyshyn, the man. Yeah.
James, totally. He's he's a workhorse, and he's brilliant as well and creative. And yeah, but I think James Olin, was really inspiring to me.
James Olin, yep.
Too, but James is he is probably one of the best game directors I've ever worked for, and just a really good person, really creatively driven. He's also able to have a logical discussion with you, very reasonable, and hear all your thoughts and go, I don't care, we're going this way. But when he does, you understand it. Like, I've had other game directors do that and say, I don't care about all your thoughts, we're doing this. And what you often get is this little bit more like, I don't know, you might even call it like a little pride or a little self-centeredness or a little myopia, where like, I think the game has to be like this, therefore we're going to make this decision.
You probably deal with egos quite a bit, I would imagine, in that world. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I guess James wasn't that. He was a game director who could make those hard decisions, but without ego, always with a desire to like make the best thing. And yeah, he's still an inspiring figure to me today. And Daniel too. I mean, Daniel Erickson, like, he too brought me to tears in my interview with him when I first interviewed at BioWare, and he was a great mentor. Like, I don't think I appreciated enough at the time how much I learned from Daniel and the BioWare training, writing process about storytelling in games. But as I go further in my career, I'm like, gosh, 60%, 75% of what I still consider like the core of good narrative design and storytelling in games comes from that experience, which is interesting, and to his credit.
Did you read James Olin's article he had going back a couple months about his time leading SWTOR?
No, I don't. I should read that. Yeah,
you should check it out. You should check it. It's very introspective in how it was really taking a lot of his personal time, a lot of him. He was tired towards the tail end of it, and he had to step away because it was a lot for him. He sounds like he gave it truly his all, and you can feel it. It's a absolute love letter to Star Wars, love letter to KOTOR in a lot of ways. And I have to say this, and I know that if I wouldn't be able to do your job, because I love to write. I have about 30 minutes of animated film. It's a Star Wars fan project. I wrote it, hired a bunch of artists, animators, voice actors, composer, and put it together. Working on our last one. So I like to write a little bit in my own little way. But I cannot stand when people criticize my work. And it's like the worst thing you can possess as someone putting out art is that you have to be able to take criticism, construct it, recognize it. What is it for? Is it valid? Is it not valid? And how can you incorporate that? I recognize that. But so first off, let me ask you that before I ask you the other question. How do you feel with criticism? Does it hurt? Do you look at it and accept it? What's your opinion on that when you read it?
It was really hard for me. In fact, I mean, I had some very deep, introspective conversations with Daniel during the early days of BioWare, and took some really hard blows to my ego and my my faith in myself as I got criticism. And he was very direct and very harsh, very honest. And all the team, we worked to each other, and so that was a great proving grounds, I guess, to try to learn some of that. There was a little bit of the it's a sort of military mentality of like, we've got to break you, which that's what I'm not a fan of to this day. But I think on the whole, it was like one of the best. Honestly, my own personal philosophy with taking feedback and giving feedback evolved. One of the things that working at Amazon the last 5 years, up until the beginning of this year, Amazon is a great company. There's a reason why Amazon is a very successful company across the world, and the leadership principles of Amazon are fantastic, principles to operate by as just anyone in any business anywhere. One of them is disagree and commit. And so in the spirit of that, that's the way I take criticism, is like, it's my duty to tell you I disagree with you. And whether I'm the one giving feedback or whether I'm the one receiving feedback, if I disagree with that feedback, I've got to speak up. Someone is going to make the decision, and it's everyone's job on the team, once that decision is made, to commit to it. And so what I quickly do is like, I'll take that hard blow. I'll spend the afternoon, the evening, maybe the whole day, whatever, like getting over it. And the next day you wake up and you're like, okay, there's a new landscape. It's a new world. Okay, now the horses can fly and we're going to make this cool. I don't know how we're going to do it, but it's going to be, it's a terrible idea.
Love that. I love
but
that.
I've let it go.
I love it.
And I think when you see people who can't do that, like, especially once you're leading the writing team and such, and it's really challenging. You realize like this person's they're really making it hard for all of us to move forward.
That's the problem.
They're throwing pot shots and brainstorms. They're still like calling out like, well, I always thought this. And you can't have that attitude. You got to just jump into the future so that you, I mean, even to the point where you've kind of forgotten about that whole other idea, which is very hard to do in some stories. And there's even some stories from my BioWare days that I still hang on to. We had just done this. But,
I love that. No, I think it's awesome. I think it's such great because like the thing is like you could read 100 good things. Or someone could give you 100 good pieces of feedback, and you're great on all these things, but you're not good at this, and you would focus on that one thing, like, and that's how I am, and I hats off to you for being able to do that, and you're right, you have to be a team player, right? Because there's nothing worse than having a cancerous teammate, and no matter what you do, any kind of project, it brings the whole room down, morale down. So I hear you loud and clear on that. So
yeah. You got to get into the yes ands, right? And like get into the importance of brainstorming, as a team and getting that sort of finding that cultural connection that you have as a group as you're creating stories is so important. And that can heal over some of those wounds because you get back in the room, you're like, okay, we've dropped my favorite thing. Let's just let that go. Now, what are we going to make that's cool instead? And find that next thing to get excited about.
New idea. New idea. Mm-hmm. So okay, so you worked on Alderaan. What were some other planets that you worked on that you remember?
I wrote the initial design documents for a lot of those planets. Whether or not like I said, they later on an entire team took on those and developed them, and so like the fact that there's a few things left over from that original document, but Coruscant was my main thing. I think I did a ton of the side quests on Coruscant.
Okay.
So that's the one I focused on the most as in terms of a world.
With the Justicars and what was it, the Black Sun or something? I don't remember the name.
The Black Sun, yeah.
Oh, it is the Black Sun. There you go. There you go.
Yes,
really
all that
cool.
was the stuff that I worked on in detail, and that was something. So then. It was almost a year after, maybe even more than a year after I wrote those initial documents that we actually had the game stood up and we could start building things. And even writing, before that we were using a modified version of the Aurora toolset to write dialogue. But yeah, actually being able to like build it later became just a different beast, and you get into the details of it. And that's where you take some of those thematic ideas you had in those early design documents. And now what could be a fun character? There's a guy here who's obsessed with archaeology. And, this is why he's in Coruscant. He's lobbying the Senate for X, Y, and Z. And so there was a lot of fun to be had. Then it becomes about creating those characters and making sure they can come at you and give you some fun and entertainment right away.
Yeah, so the Coruscant stuff is really interesting because you got to dive into, as we talked about politics, a lot of the politics that happen internally there, right? Some of the necessary evils that some of these politicians have to do in order to keep, places secure, free. This sensitive piece of information can't get let out. There's a lot of stuff in there, and I would actually, one of the things that kind of bothered me sometimes in SWTOR was, not if I'm a Jedi, because as a Jedi, there's only one way that you should be going, I think, in my opinion. Other people could probably disagree with that, but as like a scoundrel or as like a soldier who might be a bit more practical, you can kind of see why maybe this piece of information shouldn't get put out there, or you can kind of see why this politician might be doing backdoor deals and stuff, and it kind of counts it as dark side, light side. You know what I mean? It's like, I wish there was like nothing in there.
Well, so that's a really, gosh. So we talked about this a ton. There was even a time where we pursued a much more morally gray philosophy to SWTOR as a whole. Like that we were going to have light side, dark side decisions that were a lot murkier. And what we found, even in early playtesting, is that people did not like that. They didn't. What they didn't like was being presented with a really difficult decision and then making it and not having the outcome they wanted. And what they were left with at the end of the day was dissatisfaction. They wanted to go back to KOTOR, where I chose to play light side, and damn it, I was light side, and everything that happened was the result of there were some painful moments as a result of choosing light side, but those all felt appropriate. And so we paired it back, and I mean, actually Mass Effect was coming out at that time. So like the Paragon Renegade stuff was similar, and they did have a little bit of more moral grayness in those. But they had their own polls, and I think that's kind of how so it wasn't that wasn't considered and explored.
Yeah.
And at least the way we did it, people just didn't love it.
Well, so it's funny you say that. So like KOTOR 1, I very much agree with what you're saying. It's very black and white. What they did there, Casey Hudson, Carpachet, and all those folks, what they did there was good guy or kick puppy bad guy. Like a lot of them was like kind of black or white. What's the obvious thing? Comically evil versus, and it was great. It's one of the greatest games of all time. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Depending upon the day you ask me, it might be my favorite. But that's what I liked so much about the second one was that, and this is what pissed a lot of people off about the second one, and you still see people talk about it today. Is you do, and it's exactly what you were saying. People don't like the fact that on Nar Shaddaa, you meet this guy who asks you for 5 credits, so you decide to be a good light side Jedi. You give him 5 credits. Then Krea's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, now he's going to go become a target, and it literally shows the guy run down the street, get jumped, beat the hell out of, and robbed. And it's like, what did I do? So,
yeah,
I get it.
People did not like that on SWTOR, and we were trying to appeal to a larger audience,
Yeah.
So there was a sort of weight to what we were doing that I think KOTOR 2 didn't have, and I think, I mean, it's certainly cool for games, I think, to explore that, and Star Wars is an exception in this respect, right? Like other games can have a lot more ambiguity and a lot more sort of unpredictable.
Yeah, I think that there's space for it. If you look at Andor, if you watched Andor, there's a lot of morally questionable things that they do for the greater good. But I will say, even then in SWTOR, they do exist. These things absolutely do exist. It's just that you had to tag one light side and one dark side. A lot of times there is kind of a middle one that doesn't get tagged one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So no, I understand you on that completely. So you did the entire chapter 1 of the night story?
Yeah. So I wrote it and finished it, and later on edits were made for sure. But like that part of the story up until Darth Engel's defeated was my story.
Right.
Sure. I mean, although there were other versions of it, other drafts, like I mentioned, some sore points to this day where I'm like, oh, if only we had done that. But
are you allowed to say any of them, like some potential other things that might have happened?
I don't think I'm not allowed, but I think for my own sake, I'm not going to go into it.
Okay.
It's like I said, it's like this wound from the past that I've taped over.
You've moved on from it?
Yeah,
okay.
and if we go down that path, like there's just a huge discussion of what could have been if we had taken this other tack. But yeah, I'm proud of what we came up with. And yeah, to the point you made earlier about Coruscant, the goal was to tell this story that had the complexity where the Republic had created these dangerous weapons, right? And shelved the project. And then this turned out to, and then the Sith took advantage of that. So I think that is kind of right with what you're saying. Like there was a good political aspect to that, and what the Jedi Knights going around doing is trying to redeem these terrible choices that were made, and fix things that have been broken.
I love it because you're kind of discovering it as it's happening, and you're like, what were you guys doing here, man? With who thought this was a good idea? And the politicians around the room were like, I don't know.
And back then, you might have looked at politics and said, no politician would ever do something like that. These days, you'd be like,
yeah, it's all believable, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it is.
For sure. But so when you're doing, so let me ask you. So the Journal of Master Nostaral, which Nosterol is one of the cooler characters in the game. Every interaction you have with him is sweet, and I hate how they have him die if you go the dark side route on Ossus. I'm like, that's so dumb, man. He should be alive. I
That
hated
was out
it.
of my purview, you know.
I know that was past you, but you saw it. You had to have known that happened, though, right?
Yes, I know they killed him off. Yeah,
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I love that character. I mean, I feel like Lance Henriksen voiced him, and like I got to be in those sessions. And
how cool is that? Oh,
man, super cool. Yeah, I mean, Nostral's probably I don't know, he's my favorite character from all the work I did there, but he's
cool
up
character.
There. And yeah, I agree. He's fun.
So this is one of the coolest pieces of video game tie-in, collector's edition media you could ever get, in my opinion. What you did with this book and what they did with the chapters that were put online, it fed juicy, delicious lore of this era, which I think is the best era of Star Wars, and it tells a wonderful story. So I would say that this book, it's almost a piece of, I treat it almost as a book by itself, which I guess would be kind of the point by you in a way. And what I loved about it was it's much like this book I'm pointing at, Fire and Blood there, which is told, it's the House of the Dragon story told by the perspective of a maester and a what do you call them? Why am I forgetting the name of them? The clown, the jester, of a jester. So you have these two perspectives of history. So you're doing this perspective of history from Master Nosterol. So it's almost his idea and his view and the Jedi view of history, which I love because it might not all the way be accurate, which is very cool.
For sure. Very important thing that later, I mean, actually, that's a huge topic on Elder Scrolls too. You know, we had the concept of franchise mysteries and untrustworthy narrators was huge there. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, it's great to hear you say that. That was, I mean, I wrote all those timeline videos. I produced them, and then wrote all that stuff. I am very proud of that work. But it took me away from the game, which sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, like I didn't get to work on the whole section of the game. But yeah, I had a blast working on that and the blur pieces and the other the comics and stuff like that. Yeah, that piece and Nosterol, like his slant on things and what he was, I wanted him to have an arc in that, like very much like he is realizing some of the problems with the Jedi philosophy as he's learning what happened throughout his historical investigation. And that's cool. I mean, I'll take the unpopular opinion, maybe. Well, some people that Brian Johnson's Star Wars was a really great exploration of the Jedi philosophy and traditions and mythology, and I think that's what Nosterol was maybe an early iteration of.
So did you write all of this on your like how much input from how many people were involved with this? Like, was it a ton of input?
I'm not. Well, I mean, I think Daniel read it and gave me notes for sure, and then Lucas had notes too. But I mean, there wasn't a lot of it. I mean, just like any other thing you would write, I wrote the whole thing. I got a couple rounds of feedback, rewrote it.
So talk to me. So we're talking like this is the juiciest bit of Star Wars lore for so many people here. What were the inspiration? Was there a ton of Cold War stuff? You're a news guy. You're probably a history guy. The general who dies on Bothawui,
yeah.
It reminds me of the Alamo.
For sure. Yes, that was definitely a thought that I had there. This this hopeless last stand, right? I mean that's so it was cool. Very noble. Like we hadn't seen a Jedi doing that, but that was definitely the inspiration for that.
And in your character, Hilo Viz, breaking the blockade in a heroic fashion, which I love that you toss in there every now and then because there's a profit to be made, right? So like.
She's a great character. She's one of the ones I remember.
She came back. Yeah,
exactly. Back. Well, she wasn't even in the game, when I made her up, and neither was Nosterol. So they weren't necessarily even pegged to go into the game. They were just characters that would exist in this, this promotional fiction. But yeah, she's a great character too. And yeah, I don't know. There was a short story I wrote called Smuggler's Vanguard about her stealing
I
a
do
Jedi
remember
Vanguard
that.
starship. And
Yep.
there was actually like, gosh, I got really close to writing a whole novel about that, which would have been fun. I mean, that's yeah. But
I got some of them up there. The SWTOR books, the Revan novels in
yeah,
particular. Yep.
it's just, man, when Lucas sends you a contract for writing a book in the Star Wars universe, the contract is thicker than any of those books you read. And at the time, honestly, like as much as I was loving it, it was like 5 years deep in Star Wars, and like, okay,
I can only imagine every day. Yeah.
So but I did have more of her story to tell, particularly with that Jedi that she knocked out on the ship before she stole it. It was going to be a great story there that unfolded.
It's funny how that works, right? Every little Star Wars minor character all of a sudden becomes this this named character. There's a meme for that. I forget what it's called. It's like I don't remember, Shido Glup or something like that. Like it's like a meme for like every random character has a name in Star Wars with a backstory now. But yeah, like Shido Glup or something like that. Like it's a Reddit thing. It's hilarious.
It's funny. Star Wars, I think about this often when I'm trying to come up with names for characters and other IPs. And I was like, why was it so easy to come up with names in Star Wars? But it really is, like, coming up with Star Wars names is so fun, and they always seem to hit. Because you're really focused on the sound of the morphemes, and like you could just kind of put them together. Like one of my favorite names I came up with was Fortress Gaul. He's a great character. Orgus Din, like
Orgus Din, yep.
Orgus Din. I'm still Orgus in a lot of video games I play.
Oh, really? So, that's very cool. That's very cool.
I use Fortress too. I use a lot of the names that I've created in games over the years.
How awesome is that? No, I love that. Okay, so there's the big thing that happened with SWTOR and KOTOR, and to the general public, they don't know about this. To the average Star Wars fan, they don't know about this. But to KOTOR fanatics, I'm sure you already know this. I am of the opinion that I love Star Wars The Old Republic and how it wraps up the first two KOTOR games. I think that Revan doesn't need to have the perfect magical ending. In fact, I think if you look at many historical figures in the world, oftentimes they have tragic endings where they are not the end-all, be-all, happily ever after. Napoleon comes to mind. Even Jim Bowie in the Alamo, that we're talking about the Alamo, the guy was sick on his deathbed before the battle even happened. On his deathbed, but he was horribly sick, and he died kind of unceremoniously after being this legend, right? Like there's a lot of examples of Abraham Lincoln, right? Like of these historical figures that just don't have the ending you wish they had, right?
For sure.
And people are like really upset. And I see their point of view and their perspective about how Revan was handled and put into a situation where it seemed as though he was used to profit off his name and really kind of put Star Wars in this era specifically so they could make a little bit of money off of the Revan character. Now, I think... Again, I already said my piece. I love the Revan novel. I think Drew did a good job with probably what he had to work with. I think that the way him holding back the Emperor from going full force and doing everything he can, and Mitra Surik helping, keep him sane during this time and supporting him, I actually do like this. I think it's really cool, but a lot of people don't. Like, did you read this when the game came out? Were you aware of this schism?
Yeah. I read early drafts of that. In fact, I didn't provide elaborate feedback on it or anything, but I had my own thoughts, I think for a lot of us, the hard thing is that we feel like we know Revan from our personal experience of having been Revan.
That's it.
And that to me I could feel the discordance in that. And I think throughout SWTOR, I had those moments where, like, here's what I think of Zerka. Here's what I think of these things from KOTOR. And when they appeared in SWTOR, having to grapple with other people's perspectives on what they were was an interesting thing because of that very personal experience with KOTOR. And so that's true of Revan. And so like I felt like his story, I can't say that I was in love with it. I mean, I think the writing was fantastic, but I can't, like, the story itself, the content it wasn't my version of Revan, but that's understandable. And yeah, I mean, if he gets used again, I mean, that's, I think that's you got to expect that kind of thing. And yeah, I think hardcore fans are always going to be disappointed when you do something like that. It's also like, just ending any story is a huge challenge. And when we talk about this a lot, like I think about, just take, TV shows, take Game of Thrones, like the ending of the TV show, everybody hated it. End of Lost, everybody hates it. What do we like though? We
Sopranos.
Do like Sopranos, yes, because when it ends in death, it's a lot easier to or Ozark, right? It had this poetic ending.
Yeah, Ozark was good.
So it's hard to do it anyway.
Yeah.
What's that?
I know what you're saying though. Yeah, absolutely.
And especially with those characters you've come to like really be attached to.
Was that like a big conversation you guys had though about like what should happen with the character of Revan? Because he's like the biggest character by far in that era. Everyone thinks Old Republic, the first person they think of is Revan. Was that kind of a decision, a design, like that was probably the first thing they knocked out is what we're gonna do with Revan, and that was already established when they brought you in?
No, not at all. I mean, in fact, even everything that I wrote was in the context of leaving Revan's death a mystery, what had happened to him.
Okay.
And it was, we just never knew. It was not something we were going to talk about or weigh in on until I was not in the conversation when they started crafting that stuff. Same with HK-47. Like there was no plan for HK-47 to come back when I was in the as part of the writing team.
Okay, I understand. Okay. Yeah, and again, just to be clear, I kind of can look at them as two separate continuities. I can look at them as one consistent continuity, and I get a lot of flack for this too, because I don't hate it. I think it's actually, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the Shadow of Revan thing with the split personality thing. I wasn't a big fan of that. But at the time with Vanilla, I wasn't, well, maybe I'm overspeaking, because I do remember being a little upset. Like, when you're doing a flashpoint to kill Revan with your buddies, it's like, wait, is he dead? I completely forgot about that part. I'm like, wait, is he dead?
It was a little bit of it was giving, basically, it felt kind of throwaway, honestly.
I lied. I am upset about that. I guess I'm not upset about the Revan novel or the way people were upset with Drew, and they blame Drew, and I'm like, guys, like he probably was mandated, hey, you have to go this route because we're going to put him into a game. You have to get to this end point.
It's just an insanely hard task to wrap up that story. It always is to come back to something like that. It was built for a certain thing. Like, I mean, even honestly, the Star Wars universe itself has some of those challenges embedded in it. Like Star Wars was conceived and written as a universe that would show up in the first trilogy of movies. Everything that's happened outside of that, like, it's been a challenge because some of the things that are in there are hard to work around. You
gotta be touchy with. You gotta be careful. I totally get. I wish they had almost went a different way.
And I think even, I mean, so I watched. There's not been a single of the Star Wars TV shows that I've enjoyed until Andor.
I agree.
Couldn't get into them because Andor brought something new, like fresh, but it also, I mean, it felt in keeping. But if you actually watch Andor, man, it could almost be a different IP.
Everyone says that. It doesn't even. You don't even need to like Star Wars to watch that. Yeah.
Yeah. And my wife liked it, in fact, and she's not a Star Wars fan, so I think it's a good way of describing it. And that's why it was fun. I mean, it really took the universe here's a whole other era of this.
That's what it needs. Yeah.
It does, and that's hard to do with a beloved franchise like Star Wars. I mean, I worked on working on a Lord of the Rings project, for instance, hypothetically. The drive to Aragorn, Frodo, Sam, all these characters have to be in the story. It's like, I don't really think people want to play a video game and a story with Frodo and an RPG where they're trying to be a hero in the shadow of these other characters. In fact, I would say if you look at the original, the Lord of the Rings MMO, which I loved the world, but that was the part that killed me. Was like, I'm running around, they're doing really important stuff, and I'm killing orcs in the turnip field.
Exactly.
And so I think that's something that you have to think about with these IPs. Like people get, and this,
look at KOTOR. Look at KOTOR, completely disconnected 4,000 years before. Here's a new story, fresh. Yeah,
and it totally was different, right? It was Jason Bourne in Star Wars. And that's why it was awesome for sure. And I think that, so people get attached to those characters though, and particularly people who don't have to do the day-to-day grappling with the storytelling and the characterization have this like, but of course it's like this. And they kind of get stuck on some of these things that are in an IP and attached to them. I had the same thing happen with Walking Dead, where it's like, but Rick is the star of the game. And it's like, no, player is the star of the game.
Yeah,
like
that's exactly.
I don't want to be Rick's sidekick. And you know, I honestly, it's so demoralizing how many times I've had that argument, and sometimes been successful, but more often not.
Well, I feel like that's a very much like a business decision versus a creator that understands better what people actually want. What do you guys always say, man? When I talk to you game people, the player fantasy, right? You guys understand the player fantasy, and the executive understands what's going to make the money, and so he wants to see Batman in there, right? So
yeah, well, Batman's one thing. Batman, the IP is the character, but
you know
example,
what I'm saying.
The Harry Potter RPG is a great example. There's none of the characters from Harry Potter in there. None. Zero. Zilch. It's set in the past.
How dare you disrespect Nearly Headless Nick? How dare you?
Right. Nearly Headless Nick. You're right. There are cameos. In fact, the original Telltale Walking Dead game. You know, it didn't. It only had what's his name in it. But that's it.
That's in your backyard, Georgia, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Right on.
But we want to meet new characters. When I go into these worlds, I want to meet new characters grappling with different conflicts and different scenarios. And like whether, there is the player fantasy, and that's a huge aspect of it. But it's also just like, show me a new part of this world. Like George Lucas, even when he made Star Wars, like he said, every one of the Star Wars needs to bring like a whole new dimension to the universe. I don't know what happened to the prequels, but like you can see it when you watch Empire Strikes Back. You're like, oh wait, suddenly the Force, they have telekinetics.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's there's this ice world, and like all this, like everything that happens in Empire.
Force Obi-Wan.
Like expansion of the IP. And then Return of the Jedi continued it too, like Force Lightning that did not exist.
Yep.
And so, I think you have to really think about when you're using these IPs that what you're bringing to it.
Man-eating teddy bears, that didn't exist either. Exactly.
a perfect example for sure.
There's a horror movie out there with cannibal Ewoks somewhere, there's gotta be little teddy bears that eat people.
Yes.
But I hear you on that, absolutely, and I totally agree with you as well. Unless the game is you are Aragorn, then he shouldn't be competing with that, because you're right, everything else feels menial, right, compared to what they're up to. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. So, and I just wanted to touch on that because so many people have strong feelings. It's always the thing that comes up every day. You see people talk about it, like Revan this, Revan. It's like, guys, like happened, it's over. And I always call back to the other thing. It's like, hey guys, sometimes your hero doesn't get the ending that he wants. You almost have to appreciate the peaks of what he did. The guy saved the Republic from the Mandalorians and then stopped Malik and destroyed the Starforge. That is the heroic thing that Revan did. He doesn't need to again do all this other stuff. But that's a nerd argument, right? So
it is. I mean, it's understandable that people get attached to that, but I think I think like you do, it's like remember the good things. Trying to remember a relationship you had and the breakup. Try to remember when it was something
exactly.
special.
We won't talk about the sequel trilogy and Luke Skywalker and all of them, though. We won't have that conversation because I feel like they feel about Luke Skywalker. But
really? Okay.
You liked Last Jedi, though.
Too.
Did you like Last Jedi?
What's that?
Did you like Last Jedi?
I can't even answer that without an essay.
Okay, no, fair enough.
I liked it better than the prequels. Is that fair?
That's an incendiary comment with people born in the mid '90s, sir.
Okay, sure. I understand. My kids in that category too, so I understand.
No, but I mean, my very good friend who I do a weekly podcast with, we have vicious battles over Last Jedi, so I get it. I understand there are people. I will say I like Ryan Johnson. I like Knives Out. Incredible.
Yeah, that's great.
And that other movie he did before he did Last Jedi, I forget the name of it. It was awesome too. I forget the name of it. He's a great director.
Got him on the got him into that opportunity.
Yeah, he's a great director.
But I mean, I said, I like what he did with the Jedi Order. If that's what you hated the most, then yeah, we disagree about that. But did I love the movie as a whole? Did it do what I wanted it to do to Star Wars? No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's all good. People have different opinions. People have different opinions, though. I mean, that's what it's about. It's a very polarizing movie for sure. But I'm sure I have opinions that you probably incredibly disagree with too. That we could talk about. That you're like, wait a minute, what do you think about that?
I'm sure we could find it.
But okay, so you did a lot of the planet design docs. So that's interesting because when you talk about being an author and when you listen to people talk about their process and just books, they always say there's two types of writers. There's the grower, who kind of grows things and as he does it, and oh yeah, he runs into this guy, and who's this guy? Oh, he's the king of this household. Okay, who's his relative? Who he's married to? This person. Okay, where are they from? And then he's kind of growing it as he's doing it. And there's also like the architect who wants to pre-plan, have everything more designed out. I'm guessing in game design, you have to be kind of an architect person to make it work. Is that fair?
I mean, I am that kind, so the answer is yes. Personally,
do you know anyone who's chaotic? Where you're like, I don't know how you write like this. Like,
I'm trying to think. I've definitely worked with writers like that, but it was on individual stories, so often in the writing part of it rather than in the architecting part of it. And sometimes in examples where sometimes in examples where you have to move really fast. Like, I mean, actually, Chris has Avalon has a bunch of great stories about moving fast. They were essentially pantsers just by the situation they were in. They just had to move fast, and some great stories came out of that. So there's no doubt that you can make great stories in games without having constructed the world in that great a detail. But if you think about a world like Game of Thrones, no, there's no way he could have constructed that story by just writing, moment to moment, stream of consciousness, make it up as you go. Although I would say, Tolkien is more of that than, well, that's not true. That's totally false.
George R. R. Martin actually is that way. So he was, I think actually that's where I heard that, him and Sanderson. So Sanderson's an architect and Martin is actually
he says that, gardener. But there's no way the Game of Thrones comes about.
You're like, there's no way. It's too connected. There's no way.
Well, I mean, it is there's no way. He did what he did. I mean, the way he made it work is he created the houses, and then every character falls into a group that gives them context on what they do. But the dynamics of what unfolded, he wasn't just maybe at this point Ned Stark gets killed.
No, not like that. What I mean by is, he talks about in his interviews how he would meet this person who leads this house, and then you have to kind of design that on the spot, and then he would go and meet this house that meets, and he's like, okay, and then he meets this person. It's like, no, he's dead already. I said that this person's husband died in chapter 1, and now he can't come back from the dead, and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
I think too,
fact checkers now.
Many more characters. Think about, the number of characters mentioned.
Isn't that a dream for you to write like a big IP and write? I'm sure you have that. I'm sure you want to write like a big story like that.
I have a whole fictional world that I've created that's like that, and it's a beautiful thing. Someday maybe it'll see the light of day. But like Star Wars, you put years of yourself into something, and you get to a point where you're like, step away from this for a while.
Yeah.
But I think it's super, and even no matter how much of an architect you are, there comes a point where you have to abandon or at least release that structure you built,
sure,
and just create a character who acts like a human and see how they react in certain environments.
Sure.
So I think there's a mix, and maybe we too often try to put people in
buckets. Yeah, it's a little bit of, for sure. When you write stories like that, how much of did you play D&D when you grew up?
Oh yeah.
How much of that goes into these characters where you're kind of making these decisions almost like you're playing D&D, if that happens at all? What would be the best way to go? Honestly, how would I handle it?
That's, playing D&D, certainly when I was younger, it's all about creating this world to unfold around the player and making these interesting scenarios come up. Whereas as an adult, learning more of the art of storytelling, and while we still have the player fantasy, as you mentioned, having characters who have quirks and behavior patterns and things that they're in the process of changing, and then things they're really stuck with, and then having them bump into each other and see what happens is a super fun experience as a writer, to like not know until you have that moment happen, and then, well, how would he react to this? Well, how would they react to that? Okay, and then you kind of get this great little thing that unfolds that feels like, well, this, no one could have possibly come up with this idea by itself. Like, you had to have sussed it out this way to make it happen. So I mean, I like that as much as anybody else, and I think, like I said, at some level in every dialogue and story, you need to do that, you know, or else you're gonna miss something. I mean, you could sit there and, you know, you could chart out, like, I mean, here's the way this, and I think you do have general ideas of story arcs, you know, where this
where it's gonna go,
but some of those interactions have to be made interesting like that.
Yeah, sure. So with SWTOR, one thing I read on your thing there is that you were involved with the cinematics. Is that true? On
the Blur came out? Blur cinematics. Yeah, I was like the producer on the BioWare side, if you will.
Of the what I mean is of the big famous cinematics they have of like the Battle of. Oh, really?
Yeah. I was meeting with Tim Miller from Blur, and I mean, James was in the room.
Blur. I thought you said blurb. I'm like, yeah, the Nostral thing, blurb. But no, you said Blur.
No, Blur,
I got
Blur,
you.
Yeah,
I know.
Blur,
Yep.
Yep. I mean, there we initially talked to them.
The company.
Yep. I went back and forth with them on the script. Again, though, you know, James and Daniel were in all that stuff too, so it's not like I was the author on our side. And I mean, Tim came with a dream for what he wanted to do in Star Wars, and you know, he certainly took everything we had into account and all of our feedback and took it in stride. But and you know, that was just an amazing. Certainly, the first one was groundbreaking. All the Sith, you know, lighting their lightsabers after crashing the Jedi Temple. And you know, honestly, that changed SWTOR. Even though we made that in the last, I think, year and a half before the game came out, probably when we started that, about 18 months before the game released, maybe longer. It's hard to remember exactly. But anyways, it was, yeah, it was huge. And being part of that was super fun. That was one of the things that, like I said, I wasn't getting to do writing in the game at that point, but it was so fun to be a part of that it was hard to.
You got to do so much, and it sounds like it kind of sucked. Like for you personally, it kind of sucked that you missed out on some of this stuff. But I will say, from like a legacy side of things, you were incredibly like directly responsible for some of the best stuff, like the Nostral Journal, and these cutscenes are immortal. People still watch them.
I get people messaging me at least once every couple of months. I get people messaging me, asking me questions about, well, I want to ask about Naga Sadao. And like, and you know, I'll go back. I have to go back and reread the script sometimes to remember exactly like how we characterize that, and remember what I was thinking at the time, because sometimes it's not all spelled out. But I love that stuff too, and I had so much fun making that.
Incredible. I mean, so who came up with the idea that Revan? Okay, I guess that's a good vector. So Chris Avallone wanted to take it to a different area where KOTOR 3 the true Sith would be more Lovecraftian, and it would almost be like going to hell, if you would. That's what it would be like in the unknown regions where the true Sith are. And Revan would ultimately confront them with the exile and win the day after having all these alliances. Where did you guys kind of decide, no, actually what's happening is Revan's going to have amnesia. He's going to remember the true Sith Empire. And now it's going to be this kind of grand war.
That part we did discuss earlier on. Yeah. I mean, that came up, gosh, I don't remember exactly when, but it feels like it was the product of several discussions during the development of SWTOR. And then during the Timeline series, we talked about it further. But yeah, I don't remember the moment of or who exactly was pushing that, but yeah, I mean, we never entertained the concept of the Sith that was like that per se. You know, we definitely talked about how the Sith had evolved and how like the relationship with humans became like, we wanted to dig more into that and explore like, well, what, you know, there's this alien race They have a totally different way of even processing thoughts and ideas, and certainly a way of seeing the universe. And then when humans get involved, it's like it's kind of like pouring gasoline on the fire. So it creates something that's insanely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I mean, that was at least a lot of what we thought was interesting about the Sith Empire and what it, kind of came up. And then we also wanted to make sure to touch on those points that people, recognize from the movies or from KOTOR, and make sure to carry on the spiritual, aspects of those things.
Okay. So you guys had taken the idea that Revan had, where did that amnesia, he didn't remember that he actually had met the Sith Empire before. Where did the overarching the Emperor is like the puppet master for centuries? Was that you?
No. I think now that you mention it, I'm remembering more that. Of course, Revan had amnesia before, so there's not like a tough time suggesting that, right?
Right.
His memory's been fucked with, so he's already got that going for him.
Yeah.
But I do think that this was something that Daniel and James brought to the beginning.
Okay.
Now that we're getting into specifics of it, we didn't talk about it a lot, so I just think it was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because the only reason I bring it up is because I had done a refresh through this journal, and there's a lot of stuff in there about Mandalore being corrupted, about Revan and Malak going off, finding the Emperor, coming back, and Malak and Revan kind of going rogue, and that was I was curious in terms of how that went, but it sounds like that was something that was established in order to make it work.
I think Malak's particular attack there, that feels more familiar to me, like something I came up with. But so often as what I do remember is there was we definitely had decided at the beginning of production that Revan had this relationship with Revan and the true Sith. Like that was something that was given to me. What I don't remember is exactly like the steps to realizing that he that he was going to how that was going to play into the story that unfolded in KOTOR.
Okay, right on. That was definitely something I wanted to talk about. So SWTOR launches. I loved it. I was too young to pay attention to the general. I imagine it went well. I loved it. I still play it to this day. Well, I will say this. I mean, you do hear some things, and the one thing I remember was someone had told me SWTOR had dropped below 1 million subscribers, and this is before they went free to play. I never had played the game not subscribed. I can't imagine not having some of the stuff that you have. But what was I just so you know, I loved it, and I didn't pay any of that mind because I was too busy playing the game and loving it until you took my friend groups away from me with Elder Scrolls Online, just so you know. Thank you. But what was okay? So you're hearing different then. Your perception was different.
Well, no, I mean, I definitely was. I sat in rooms close enough to those discussions to know, what happened. And I don't think that it's a secret or that I can't talk about it. I mean, bottom line is, when you ask for a delay, this happens all across the industry. Certainly did back then. When you ask for more time to finish a game, and you've got contracts between giant companies like Electronic Arts and LucasArts, there are big discussions to happen. Like, you, especially when you're running a studio with 300 plus people and the burn rate that we had there. So to ask for another year of development on a game like that,
a lot of money.
What happens is they say, well, tell us the delta there. Tell us if we don't give you this year, what are we going to have? Give us the scenario that's going to unfold, and then give us the scenario that's going to unfold if we do give you this year. And that second scenario better involve a lot more money, because we're about to give you a lot more money.
Right.
And so you get these expectations going of what the game like, and then we had very little targets of like how we need this many subscribers for SWTOR to be a success. And it wasn't that we dropped below 1 million. That's true that we did, but it was that we didn't hit the threshold that had been set forth in the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Like we didn't reach it. And that was immediately, sadly catastrophic. I would never have guessed that it would have been as dark as it did. Like, I mean, it turned layoffs, and then you had Ray and Greg leaving BioWare. I mean, just it was not a good time. And then we switched over to free to play because that was the big moment. You know, now forget World of Warcraft. Now we want free to play, like World of Warcraft with free to play. And so it was there was a lot of move. I mean, it changed BioWare. You know, I mean, I love BioWare. BioWare's still a great studio, amazing people working there. But for me, that was my BioWare journey was ending there regardless. Like when Ray and Greg left, you know, that was just a blow. Like I said, those guys were heroes to me. So,
well, Rob, let me tell you, just on a personal note, for me and so many people that you probably, you know, it's. We were talking about criticism earlier. I'm sure that really freaking hurt when you saw some of the things that people were saying, and then you're in those conversations with the execs and the overlords. And I get it, and I understand that, and I can't imagine what that was like. But let me tell you, from a fan, is that that game to me, I love it more than any other MMO I've played. It's one of my top 5 games ever made. I have countless thousands of hours into that game. I still subscribe to it. I still play it through it. I still make new characters and run through all the content. And the lore in it is just incredible to me. And it's the last piece of lore pre-Disney that is alive still, which is a huge thing to me. So when sometimes you might have a different perspective because it's a lived experience for you, whereas I just got to play the game. I got I got the final thing, you know. I'm sure you have a negative, so I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I mean, it's you know, it's par for the course, and I think that was my first video game studio job, so you know, it was and then BioWare to me was such a, you know, a shining city on the hill. Like it was such a it was about the principles, and at the end it didn't feel like it was about the principles anymore, and that stung more than anything. It wasn't, you know, the criticism of the work. Yeah, it was kind of disappointing to see that maybe, you know, that we didn't have that many people, but at the same time, I think we all looked at the work and we were proud of it. We knew we had made something that was special. It was special to us, and that's the way I still feel about the stuff that I create. Is, you know, did I do a great? I mean, even with like New World, which I worked on at Amazon for the last 5 years, like we started with a very difficult scenario. What we made, I'm very proud of. Did it win awards? Did it like churn the game around from, you know, failure to success? No, it didn't. And that, I wish it had. That would have been great. But at the same time, you know, I had a lot of fun. I made something I'm proud of. And I think that's the way I look at SWTOR. Is like I'm super proud of the work that I did there, and that we all did. And the friendships and everything there were fantastic. And the fact that it ended the way it did, it was just, you know, that's what happens in corporate America.
Well, it's probably good for you too, because you got to experience that, you know, as your first, you know, big gaming job too. You got to see you got to see both the fun side, the good times, and you also got to see the reality side of it as well. You know,
sure,
right out the gate.
Yeah, and then I mean, working on Elder Scrolls was a whole different. I mean, just such an incredibly different world.
I wanted to touch on that. How are you doing for time?
I'm fine on time. You know,
okay.
My only concern was like, hey, if we're going to talk for a long time, I got to get the fuel. But I ate a second breakfast.
Okay,
like
okay.
Said, so I'm ready to go.
What about second breakfast? Yeah, so I'm happy that you are, because I wanted to dive into that. So you're going away from BioWare, this experience, this kind of a roller coaster, if you will. What are you feeling? Are you kind of disheartened going into ZeniMax? Are you optimistic? Are you excited for the challenge?
Oh man, I mean, Skyrim had just
everything.
So Skyrim, you know, and like I said, things at BioWare. I mean, it wasn't just like the studio itself had changed. Also, you know, my role had changed a lot. Like the writing team was kind of pushing forward their own thing. I had been on the side working on this marketing type stuff. Like there was not really a good place for me. Daniel was leaving. It was just not an ideal situation for me. So when I got the offer to go work on Elder Scrolls, it was, I didn't hesitate a moment. I was super excited. I moved my family from Austin to Baltimore, even though, you know, Baltimore for some people is not quite as exciting. I had a great time there, but it was huge. And I loved, I mean, Skyrim's top 5 games for me, for sure. So
it's incredible. It's so,
you know,
good.
And the thing was that Elder Scrolls at that time looked a lot like World of Warcraft. And what happened when Skyrim came out is they said it needs to look like Skyrim. And so there was a massive overhaul going on where the game needed to be.
So it was tab based, tab target. I think that's what it's called, right? Tab based MMO. It was that way.
I actually don't remember what the combat was. what I remember is the storytelling. What it was is when you got a quest, you got a wall of text.
I hear
and
you.
no VO. And so what they want to do is like, we don't want that. We want to do VO like Skyrim, and you're sitting there looking at the character and they're moving. And so that's what I came in as a specific, you have a specific skill set from working at BioWare to write this dialogue that we want. And then a couple of us, actually, Rebecca Harwood was also hired from BioWare. And then Zach, I think that was the three of us. But I mean, Wynn McLaughlin was our lead writer, and he had been from BioWare too, but as a world designer. Yeah, it was. I mean, a lot of the people honestly moved over to Elder Scrolls from BioWare.
Did you get to meet God Howard himself?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Not in any close way where he would even.
Was there aura glowing around him, or?
When hanging out with Todd Howard, it's totally like normal. When he starts talking about the game, there's like a magic thing that fills the air. It's like your excitement is just like building and building, listening to him talk about what he's doing, and he's excited about it. And it's obviously he's thought so much about, and the team has thought so much about what they're creating, and you just get like I remember talking about what the construction system that's going to be in Fallout 4, and my gosh, like this is the coolest thing that's ever happened in video games. It felt so amazing. And, he's a really inspiring guy.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So with Elder Scrolls Online, Elder Scrolls is very cool to me in a sense that the lore is all stemming from a video game. And I was just talking about this earlier with somebody replying to one of my videos about Dragon Age. I was having this conversation where Dragon Age could have went to where it went. Elder Scrolls is a video game that has layers upon layers of centuries of beautiful, delicious lore and magic systems and factions. And it's probably the biggest fantasy world stemming from a video game that I can think of outside of maybe World of Warcraft. You could probably think of some more actually now that I think about it, but it's one of the biggest anyway, you could say.
Yeah, for sure.
So you get to jump into this theme park. How familiar were you with Elder Scrolls? Did you have to dive in and really kind of put a lot of studying time in? What was that prep like?
I had played all the Elder Scrolls games, so I did not have to do any extra prep. And we had, and the team that, one of the reasons why Elder Scrolls is awesome is this, is because certainly Elder Scrolls Online, but even previous stuff, there's a huge contingent of old, Dungeons and Dragons folks who were on the team. Like the lead of my zone team on Elder Scrolls was Zeb Cook. He wrote the original player's handbook. I mean, this guy is legend. Just being in the room with him was awesome. Brainstorming with him, writing with him.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Stuff like this is amazing, And our lore master Lawrence he was also, huge. He's a Larian now, so that just tells you like this guy's an amazing person to get to work with. So very different, from BioWare. It was like working with a new team that just jumped in and started picking up BioWare. Walking into Elder Scrolls, these are like legends.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cool. Like it was amazing, and I just hit the ground running there because I had sort of a work cut out for me scenario where it's like we want to switch these quests over to be like dialogue and like cinematic and make them feel a little bit more personal and make the characters a little richer. And so it was so fun. Like I had a blast working.
What were some quest lines, some stuff that you worked on in Elder Scrolls Online that you remember?
I overhauled almost all of the Daggerfall Covenant. I say overhauled, like you could read that different ways. Like there was a zone there. There were a lot of characters. We changed a lot of the characters. We changed the exact dynamics of the story, set up quests differently, added new quests. But it was that's Daggerfall Covenant almost entirely.
So the name of the game was exactly that. It was this insane, massive success of Skyrim. Naturally, if we're going to do Elder Scrolls Online, it needs to feel like this massive success of Skyrim, right? That's the idea. And I remember playing the beta. I will say, I remember playing the beta of Elder Scrolls Online. And I don't know what it was. Like, it just didn't quite do it for me. But I was one of the guys who pre-ordered the whatever edition of Elder Scrolls Online with my mama's credit card. Thank you, mama. And it totally was different. Like everything, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just I was more prepared for it. Maybe I was accepting it as my new future for a while my friends left SWTOR. But it was so immersive, and I think you know what? Now that I think about it, Rob, and you tell me if I'm misremembering, and I could be misremembering. SWTOR had a content problem on launch. There wasn't a ton of stuff endgame. Did Elder Scrolls Online have this similar thing, where like endgame there wasn't a ton?
There was much more focus on the inability to go over and play the other faction stories. That's so right. That's so because and we did a sort of a reboot on Elder Scrolls Online where we came back with one Tamriel a year later, and that was opening it up so that you could play those other storylines.
I remember that
changed the game significantly, and having the world level up, like having the world respond to you whatever level you were at, so you could play through. That was a huge change that came to. So there was less focus on that lack of in-game content. There certainly was that, and maybe this is also just reflects on what I was focused on because of where I was on the team.
Sure.
But I don't remember as much backlash on the lack of content. I mean, I think with SWTOR, people burned through those stories so fast and then felt like let down afterwards, like they were doing, B-level content.
I don't know why, man. I was like freaking all 8 of those quest lines would have taken you like 800 hours to play through.
Like the legacy system, the legacy system was designed to make you want to play through all the different classes in SWTOR.
Yeah.
We really thought that would be incentivized, but we also knew there might be people who just want to play one story, one type of character.
Yeah, I suppose. My first one was the Trooper. I loved it. But I loved the Imperial Agent was phenomenal. It felt incredibly immersive and reactive, and both Warrior and Inquisitor were also wonderful too. I thought they were all wonderful stories, but anyway, not to dive back into that. I could again like SWTOR's. That's what I spent the most time on. I played the heck out of ESO. I put probably 500-600 hours into ESO. I loved it. I like lightsabers, where someone else might like swords and staffs.
Totally.
Now
totally understandable.
Yeah. So I seen that you had worked on a bunch of different games after ZeniMax. There was that Wizard 101 game. I remember when that came out, when it first launched. It was cool. It was like this Harry Potter
game is still going, and they're still making expansions for it every year, and a lot of the same team is still there. That was super fun. I left, frankly, I left Elder Scrolls only because my family wasn't happy in Baltimore. So it was and we made every effort to set up like a remote. It's amazing to think if that happened today, I think that we would have worked it out for me to work remotely. But there was a lot of effort made, and I'm really grateful for that effort to help to set me up to work remotely. But ultimately it didn't get approved. So it was like, well, I got to find a job in Austin. King's Isle was there. It was a good place to go, and I made some friends there that I'm still really close to today. And I had friends, I feel like in my career, I'll often say I kind of floated around trying a lot of different things after Elder Scrolls. And I've come back to at least wanting to work on RPGs, cinematic RPGs is the heart of what I want to do, period. Mobile games were another I don't know, this is kind of insane amount of money offered here. It's kind of hard to resist, but it's for me it was a soul-sucking experience. For other people it might not be, but saw a lot of things. Ubisoft and Skull and Bones, that's a whole nother story that
Are you willing to go into it, or are you not willing to go into that one?
I'll go into it to the extent that just to say that, I had friends who had worked on Skull and Bones literally years before I got there and had left demoralized and unhappy and not, fan. When I came in, it sounded like there was an opportunity to explore a different direction. What I learned after I got in was some parts of it were literally shocking to me, and some of the parts, not just the game design, but the content, the characters, and so it wasn't a good fit for me. I was trying to make it work, but ultimately COVID happened, and that ended up being a really convenient reason for us to part ways. because I wanted to go back and be with my family in California and Singapore.
Yeah, that was, I noticed that. So you were in Singapore away from family while you're working on that.
Yeah. I mean, the idea was that they might come over and join me, but like I said, then COVID happened.
It had to work too, though, right? Like it had to make sense, and you had to see the vision where that was going to last. I hear you on that. And
I think so. And yeah, you know, I mean, and you know, just being in Ubisoft even for a short term, like I learned a lot, and I think that's obviously an amazing studio family, and so it was a cool experience. I definitely don't regret it. But I Skull and Bones, you know, I guess you know, when it came out, I certainly felt a little sense of satisfaction, like.
Yeah, well, I remember the backlash on Skull and Bones when it came out. Now there's been a lot of different pirate games that have came out well before that, and I guess after that, and I guess Black Flag is
exactly
comes to mind.
That's right? One of the best ones ever made.
Yeah,
this game was made because they said Black Flag is so fun. Why don't we make a game that's just that?
It's logical. Yeah, exactly. I get it. And then there was, what's that other one? Sea of Thieves.
Sea of Thieves. Yeah, that's fun. Different but fun.
Yeah. So to touch on Amazon, this is the one that I think I'm the most disappointed about in terms of how it ended, because I think that New World story was the best part of the game. I think that New World's like the lore and the story that you've established, this what's that era called? Not medieval, but that what do you call it? Colonial. Yeah. Why am I forgetting the name of it? Colonial. Imperial. Exactly. Colonial. I think that's a very under explored era in gaming. I feel like a lot of times you get modern or you get medieval high fantasy, but you don't get a ton of a colonial. There was the one game that came out that was an RPG that came out that I really enjoyed. They came out a second one. It wasn't that good, but dang, I don't remember what it's called. It was actually quite good. About 2020-ish. What's the name? I
mean, also consider Assassin's Creed. Definitely not the best Assassin's Creed, but the one about the American Revolution was done well. It is really
good. I love that. Yeah. I actually love that game.
It is really hard to tell a story in there because there's so much, you know, cultural memory and like personal attachment to some of the things that happened and that were good, bad, or ugly, and that's hard. I mean, timing to tell stories in that space, and that's why, you know, New World was originally much, you know, set in Virginia, and it was.
I didn't know that. I didn't know.
Yeah, it was originally set in Roanoke and Jamestown, and it was it pivoted before I got there wisely to say, like, let's go, like, how about a magical island in the Atlantic? So where all these, I'm not responsible for that part, but I basically picked it up from there. Like, okay, there's a magical island, and there's some characters, and you kind of live forever here, we think. And that's kind of where we picked it up from. But I really think
that was the well, I think that was the interesting part of the game. And I was thinking of Greedfall. I just found the name of it, by the way. Greedfall. I don't remember if you remember Greedfall.
I haven't played it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Greedfall is a fun colonial RPG. The second one is meh. But no, I thought that was a very interesting take. You know, this island where, if I remember correctly, in New World, I played it on launch. You were like the Soul Warrior,
Soul Warden.
Yeah, and you're fighting the corruption of the island, which I thought was a really fun thing. I actually found that game was, I don't know, I felt like the systems were too monotonous to like sustain itself, if that makes sense. But I am kind of upset because when I heard that game was getting closed down, it's kind of a bummer because it was one of the more recent modern MMOs, and I think it really signals a unfortunate reality that I don't know if MMOs are a genre that outside of WoW, I mean, can it even be explored anymore after you have such a giant like Amazon behind it and it still is getting closed down? It concerns me.
I mean, we'll consider. I mean, we did have, you know, there was a, you know, at first it was a success. Like the number of players that we had at the beginning, and it wasn't subscription based ever.
Massive.
So, like,
everyone was streaming it. Everyone was playing it. Absolutely.
And I mean, to be honest with you, though, the story that I'm proud of is not the story that you saw there at all. I mean, that was like hacked together with rubber cement and popsicle sticks. The version that we released in Eternum, a year and a half ago now, like that's the story that I'm proud of, that I spent a lot of years
recent one.
on. Yeah. I mean, it's the same game. It's just we redid the entire story so that it was actually like way more interesting. I think way more.
Okay, well, dang. See, now I'm even more upset. I didn't get the chance to to play through that. I guess I could. I still have time.
It's not completely. It's not completely down yet, is it? I
got like 5 or 6 months to get through it. I think.
I think right. Something like that. But I think I can understand what you're saying. Like the thing is, that game had changed its identity so many times, not just in the IP, but also in the way the game was. I mean, originally it was a PvP game, and then it was a survivalist construction game, and then it was both, and then now we wanted to have an RPG element with story and quests, and that literally came in 9 months before the first launch. So like there weren't even any NPCs in the game a year before launch. So that's why I say it was hacked together. It was like
really
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was very quick turnaround on that stuff.
Kind of like Fallout 76 in that sense, where it kind of didn't have.
But there's a great success story, right? They took it back, and I think we had an opportunity to do more of that with New World. But Fallout 76, they did a great job when they took it back and realized, like, hey, this is not what people want. They want the Fallout experience they've come to know and love, and that's what we should have done with New World. It's gone more that route. Like people want that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
sometimes people tend to listen when you're the writer and you come to them and like, hey, players want storytelling. They want characters to interact with. They're like, he's biased. Like we don't like that. We click through the dialogue anyways. And it's like, well, okay, if that's your attitude about it, then
there is. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of players that do that. I will say I'm not one of them. I think that's why I do. When I did go back and play WoW, honestly, WoW. And again, I wasn't there during the height of it, but WoW was more so the social aspect of being around with a bunch of guys. And even the gameplay is like, it's very simple. You push 3 buttons in a row, and that's pretty much what it is. I mean, that's oversimplifying it, but you get the idea. The story itself was not that good. Okay, I'm sorry to break everybody, to piss people off. The WoW original story, Lich King, I think it picks up. But TBC was cool, but...
yeah.
The original WoW,
but it's the world. Like that's what's amazing. And like World of Warcraft is, certainly in the amount of hours I spent, it's in my top 5. It's not my top 5 games but the story notwithstanding, like it's an amazing experience going around.
That's what it's good at. Is the world?
It's so good, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like I mean, Valheim's another one of my favorite games. Like really light on
Valheim, yeah.
Oh, it's such a great game. But it tells you just enough story. I mean, you're a warrior, in the afterlife, trying to prove yourself to Odin. Go make a life for yourself and kill these evil monsters.
Okay.
I know what I'm doing. This is what this game is about, and that's what World of Warcraft's about. I mean, actually, World of Warcraft sadly doesn't have quite as simple of a direction that you're going in, but like the thrill of exploring a new area in World of Warcraft was, for me, I've never had that before or since. Such a great, exciting exploring.
And if I'm not mistaken, I remember listening to Lex Friedman's podcast with, I forget the gentleman's name. It's going to kill me. One of the main writers on World of Warcraft. I'm forgetting his name. He's doing the California Rush game now. Man, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Anyway, he was talking about how like that really hadn't been done before. Like a big MMORPG with like story arcs and that kind of design. It was really more so go out and kill hordes of enemies and grind levels and do boss fights. And that's something I have to remind myself is like that was kind of the first of its kind. It really started that, right?
Well, what I would say from having been an MMO player before and an MMO player after is that there were no MMOs before World of Warcraft that encouraged solo play. And it's still a hotly debated thing when you're building an MMO is like, well, how much do we account for solo players? But it's I played World of Warcraft 90% of my time solo. You can do it both ways and it's fun. And that's what like EverQuest's amazing MMO. I love playing it. Star Wars Galaxy is amazing MMO. I love playing it. But the solo experience was poor.
Yeah.
Compared to what it was in World of Warcraft.
Right.
It was I think that is what made that game beyond successful.
I can only imagine what it was like to be in 2004 and fire up WoW and be by yourself and then go meet randomly a group of guys to do some dungeon and now you're buddies. Just, you know what I'm saying? I can only imagine what that's like. So,
that was fun. SWTOR, it helped to change some people and the multiplayer friendly players. I mean, including myself, I was way more prone to multiplayer after playing WoW than I was before.
With all the stuff going on, I'm sure you know so many people right now and in the game dev world, right, where people are losing their jobs at a pretty high rate right now, and it's hard. It's sad to see that, you know. I've heard stories from people I've spoken to about people who have been at studios for 20, 30 years and they're losing their jobs, and they're incredible at what they do, and they can't find another job. It's difficult to because of the industry right now. So
yeah, I mean, the industry is. I feel so bad for people who are sort of new or just coming up in the industry who struggle more, because I mean, I'm a little deeper in my career, so I'm in a little more secure place. Right. But it's got to be hard. Well, I know it's hard because I talk to people, and some people are really at their wits' end. And you know, it used to be that people would often leave the game industry because they were kind of burned out in the game industry. Now people are leaving because this seems impossible to move forward in. And that's, you know, it's sad to see, but
my hope on it is, Rob, that there are going to be a lot that will never work in the game industry again, unfortunately. And there's just too many people. The job market's very competitive, and unfortunately, a lot of these jobs are going away. That being said, I really am hopeful, and you see it all the time with these new studios that pop up, that there's some gold that comes from this with people who are not going to quit. They're going to be resilient. They're going to put their neck on the line with risk. And I'm hoping that there's going to be some that fail, but I'm hoping that there's some great ones that succeed. And we see some people who persevere through this dark moment and are rewarded for it. That's kind of my hope.
I love that. Well said. Like,
so
that's perfect. I totally agree. And I think that's likely. I mean, I think that we, you know, going back all the way to Atari's crash with ET and all that stuff like that, you know, we've always seen these things, these moments are places where the industry recreates itself in some way that's really interesting. And ultimately there's going to be great games in the future. You know, we're nowhere near the end of this. So.
Oh, definitely not. There's too much money involved, right? And I mean, even if you look at some of the great ones out there, you know, heck, we talked about Todd Howard himself, right? Was it Morrowind that they were putting there? It was kind of their last stand on, I want to say, in the history of Bethesda.
In Bethesda. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think Morrowind was an insane endeavor. Like, the stories are crazy, what they went through. And thankfully it panned out.
It kept, now look at them now. So, I say that, but they just unfortunately had to lay off a bunch of people. Yes, so maybe there's a lesson in that too.
The studio itself is still strong, and they're going to make some new stuff, and hopefully those people will start up their own projects or find their place, or move on and find something else to do that they love doing.
Right.
But I totally agree with you.
But you know what I'm saying. You get the general idea is that people can succeed in these moments. So that being said, I'm going to ask, if that's okay, just some questions from the community. There's a lot out there, so I'm just going to pick some of the best voted one. And some of these people tried to be tricky and throw in 7 questions in one question. So we're gonna be literally, this person has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of a bunch of different questions. This one's good. I'll ask the first one there, since it's the first one they thought of. Were Satele or Malcolm supposed to die in the trailer Deceived?
Satele definitely wasn't, right? Because she was in the game, and this was a prequel to the game, so we knew. There was never a doubt that Satele. I mean, this was her early time. Malcolm, I think we knew. So we were building the roster of representatives of each of the classes, right? Like,
sure.
You have each one. So
it's very evident, right? Here's a smuggler. Here's a soldier. Here's the Yep.
Yes, exactly. So we weren't planning to kill off Malcolm ever in that one. There were a lot of interesting twists. I mean, I can tell you a lot of fun stories from the development of that trailer and the storytelling that happened there. But
elaborate. What you got for us? Yeah, people would love to hear something that you got, any kind of nugget at all that you can remember about. So I think they mistitled it. Deceived is is not the one they're talking about.
You're right.
Yeah,
this was Hope.
Yeah, exactly, Hope. So that Hope one there, first off, so badass. But any nugget that you can get, anything that people would nerd out over if they heard?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's told this before, but there's a really cool moment in there where Malgus comes down with his lightsaber on Satele, and she blocks the lightsaber with the Force. Maybe probably not surprising at all. That was hugely controversial, like both the BioWare and Lucas everywhere. The strength of what Blur brought to the game, because that was all their invention, was cool. We debated it, argued it, talked about changing it a lot, stuck with it, and really did something that had never been seen in Star Wars before. And I don't know that it's been done since, but I don't think it's off limits anymore if someone wanted to do that. But that was the idea, was like to show you some element of the Force you hadn't seen before.
I think that's cool, like a Force shield, like on, like I think that totally makes sense. When I saw it at the time, it made sense, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? An eye test is like, is it, if you see something, is it jarring? Like, for example, in the Clone Wars, there's an episode where one of these guys sticks their lightsaber up, it starts rotating like a helicopter, and he flies away. That's jarring, okay? But what you guys did, absolutely, it made sense. Absolutely.
That's cool. So, yeah, that one was, I mean, yeah, we did, there was debate about where to set that one. It was not always going to be Alderaan. And yeah, I didn't even know that we would have. So, I mean, one thing that happened there is that, to see it was made, that was a, big announced trailer. We didn't necessarily know we were going to do another one right away. Like, that wasn't a done deal. And even the third one, we didn't know whether it was going to be the third one or that it would end up being the game intro, which is what it ended up being. So yeah, there was a lot of fun little bits from all throughout there, but yeah, that was a moment that stuck out to me. Malgus bringing down the mountain on when the mountain comes down, like, that was a cool scene. I don't think there was a lot of argument about that, but there, we really hashed that stuff out in brainstorm rooms with all those guys present.
Those rooms are probably so awesome. Well, what if he did this and then he did that? No, that's no. It'd be way cooler if he went like this, and you guys are all probably with like invisible lightsabers moving around.
Yeah, a little bit of that for sure. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, it was definitely a fun.
That's what you guys did, though, man. You guys made the soldier cool in that fight. That's what you guys did, because you're like, how do you?
That was one of the big points, was to make the soldier as badass as the Jedi. And yeah, the grenade scene, I'm forgetting that one for a moment. That was definitely one that was fine-tuned a lot to get to where it was. And you gotta, these CG, pieces like that, the amount of effort and detail that goes into every frame is just insane. Like, insane how often we were reviewing the same frames over and over again.
Sure.
And it's crazy, but it was a beautiful thing, and really thrilled. And then I got to work with them again, Blur, on Amazon. We did a piece where, I don't know if you saw this, but it was on their show, the video game trailer show, with Arnold Schwarzenegger in New World. You probably haven't seen it.
I might have, but it had been a while. I might not have. Did you guys?
It's called Secret Level. The show. Have you seen this?
No.
So the show is called Secret Level. Blur makes that show. It's the same as
yes, absolutely, with all the different IPs, and they do an episode per. Yes.
So yeah, I got to work with them again on making the one for New World, which Arnold Schwarzenegger is.
I do remember that. So you worked on Next Level then.
Yeah,
Secret Level. Yeah, Secret Level. Yeah, Secret Level was sick. Did they have an Arcane episode or no?
I don't actually know. I've only seen I think
they had a Warhammer one.
They definitely wouldn't have it. It would have been part of an episode, but
yeah,
it would have been. Okay. I don't know what they've done since. Honestly, I haven't checked up, but it was fun. They're such a cool gang.
Right on. Let's see here. This guy just wants to tell you that you're a legend, no question. It's like the second highest voted.
Nice.
All right. What surprised you about the reception to the lore, storylines, characters? Anything in particular that surprised you? Both positive. Either positive. Let's go positive. We've been doing a lot of negative for some reason. Let's do positive. Anything positive from that's what sticks with you. But anything positive that you remember from characters, lore, stories?
I mean, one thing that sticks out is like my general impression was people like T7, which I was worried about because I thought he was too cliche, and that I didn't maybe push the envelope enough with him. and maybe it was just the affection of like what he represents, but that was a surprise for me. I was worried about that. I mean, as a writer, there's a lot of things you worry about. But like, I was worried about Kira as well. I think she was received a little bit more mixed. But
so you wrote Kira. You wrote Kira.
Yeah.
Oh, Kira's awesome. One of the children of the Emperor. Awesome character.
Yeah, that whole storyline was that was the pitch for the storyline, was that she was she's the twist. And in that first arc.
What other companions did you write?
Those two. Those I can't believe
T7 and Kira.
Yeah, those are the two that I wrote the most of their dialogue and like charted out their storyline. I pitched BioWare's, or BioWare's, I think. It was BioWare's when I pitched to me, became BioWare's. Hall Hood wrote that though, and did an amazing job. Yeah, and we all got to pitch on all those things and brainstorm together. So it feels like I was involved in all of it. But T7 and Kira were the two that I really.
Yeah, I liked them both. I thought T7 was awesome. How you guys did the writing and structured it, where you could kind of understand what he's saying. I thought that was really smart. And then Kira as well. The whole Children of the Emperor storyline is awesome. I think it makes her question herself, and then you as the great Jedi you are, you correct the ship on her and make her confident in herself and help her fight through that, So
yeah, I feel like they stole that in the new movies.
Or not. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, they stole it in the new movies. Or not, like you said.
Or not.
What's
or
funny,
you go the other way, which is
what's funny is they put out the Rey character armor in SWTOR, which that's one awesome thing about SWTOR is the graphics increase and also the outfits. It's like a big part of it. But I always put that on Kira, so it's funny you say that. She always looks like Rey, and
she is Rey.
Yeah,
there's something I was going to say in there about. Interestingly, her name was at once Jason Merrill. So we traded names. Neil Palmer and I, who was doing the Sith Warrior, traded names, and I took Kira Carsen and took Jason Merrill. I don't remember why we traded those names. I think because there was another name in one of the stories that was too close, and
okay, interesting. Jason was supposed to be the name for Kira.
At one point, yeah, just probably a short time. I don't remember how long it lasted. I just remember bartering stuff like that often, names and and even story ideas, like some of the elements from the Jedi Knight and the Trooper kind of went back and forth during some of our story rounds.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Two more questions here for you. One, do you remember anything for planned class quests for Act 4 or 5? Nothing at all. Yeah.
Nope. Yeah, barely even Acts 2 and 3, because I was, I was already like, I was deep into Coruscant, and then I was working on
other
the
things.
timelines.
Yeah. Well, so do you remember that at all? Because I think all the class stories were supposed to, and I could be wrong on this, they were supposed to have another chapter.
When I was working on them, they were going to be a trilogy, and they were going to all be in the release product.
Okay.
I think though, and we always knew that the first one was going to be longer than the second two. I think something evolved even after that. I do know that we, well before I left the company, we were going to do more. But even at launch, there was definitely some. I mean, particularly because of the reaction to the finance, and there was internally there was a lot of consternation over what were you thinking making 8 class stories? Like how much content that only 1/8 of the players are going to see. And the funny thing is, it's hard to argue with the economic logic of that, but at the same time,
it's a little insane what you guys did. when you look at it,
players, they loved exactly that. So it clearly was a great choice for players. It just wasn't necessarily a great choice for game development. Finance.
Yeah. I tell you, it's like one of those things that I'm so happy you guys did it, but now that retrospectively, you're like, I don't know how, the amount of money that was put into that game. It's insane. It's insane. Okay, last question here, and I don't think, and if you don't know this, we'll skip it to the one right after it. So, because this isn't even in your storyline, but there's a character called the Entity, and it's in one of the Sith quest lines, and a lot of people think that the Entity is supposed to be Kreia. She's like this woman who's in a prison, who basically is trying to protect, heck, I think even the Emperor. This could be in a Night storyline, I want to say.
Which planet is this on? You know?
The entity SWTOR. The entity SWTOR. Yeah, okay, this is the Sith warrior, so Barris, this would have been on...
Yes, so that more likely Kreia, as you might understand.
Corellia.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you should talk to Neil Palmer. He would definitely know the answer to that. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't know. I can't confirm or deny that. I do know that Kreia was a character that we hotly debated from the beginning of Coach, you know, when we worked on Switch Wars, like the love and hate for Kreia, what she represented in different ways, like both her like determination to destroy the Force and her, you know, light side, dark side nature. A lot of things about her, but she, I mean, she clearly was a huge character in SWTOR 2, in KOTOR 2. So there has to be some reference to her in the game, and that may be it. I don't know. I know we resolved she would show up somewhere. All of them, Handmaiden, like all the characters in KOTOR 2 have some reference somewhere in the game to harken back to them.
Yeah, there's definitely some things. So are you like 20% sure that she might be possibly more?
30%? I literally am making up anything I would say. So I don't know. Ask Neil. Like Neil would be happy to tell you. Reach out to Neil and get him on here. Like he'll talk to you. He worked on it for much longer. He eventually, I don't know when he moved over to Mass Effect, but he's a great guy, good friend.
Yeah.
And working on the Sith warrior while I was working the Jedi Knight, we had a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah, no, that would be a question. So, or be a good question to get answered. So, no, I mean, beyond that, there's a ton more here, but I don't want to take more of your time, man. I do appreciate you for jumping on here with me. Anything you wanted to say, touch on, anything you want to get out to the people so they know what you're working on, or where they could possibly follow you for any future update potentially?
No, I don't have anywhere yet, but will soon. Definitely what I'm working on now is extremely exciting to me, and it's not long off from being revealed. I haven't exactly decided when, but it's coming up. And yeah, what I would say mostly though is just it's really gratifying to hear, always to hear from fans of SWTOR, and it's awesome that people appreciated the work that went into it, because there was a lot of heart and a lot of love and a lot of work that went in, and I, you know, it's touching to me. You know, certainly like hearing you like love the Nostroth thing, like that means a lot to me. And I know I can speak for everybody on the team on that. Like there was a mission, you know, there more than maybe any other studio I've worked at, where you really got the sense that you were part of something and everybody believed in it. And so, yeah, it brings back a lot of good memories. And so thanks for having me on them.
Yeah, of course. Any time. And when that not Lord of the Rings project gets announced, I'll be sure to reach out to you, or whatever that could be.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. We could talk about that forever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anyway, right on. Well, hey, I appreciate it, and thanks to all those who are watching. And until next time, guys, take care.
Thanks.